In the quiet of the late hour, perhaps you are sitting alone. The room around you might be filled with the symbols of a life well lived, the trophies of success, the gadgets of connection, the comfortable things you worked so hard to acquire. Yet, a different light illuminates your face, the cool blue glow of a screen. Your thumb moves in a familiar, hypnotic rhythm, scrolling through the lives of others, through news that agitates, through endless streams of information that promise fulfillment, but deliver only a fleeting distraction. There is a profound silence in the room, but a relentless noise within your mind. You may feel a particular kind of modern exhaustion, a sense of being stuck, not from failure, but from the weight of your own achievements, your own expectations. It is the quiet ache of a soul that is thirsty, in a world that offers it an ocean of salt water to drink. This feeling, this deep and restless unease, is not a personal failing. It is a universal human experience, amplified by the world we have built. It is the subtle suffering that comes from clinging, from attachment. We are taught to hold on tightly, to our possessions, to our reputation, to our youth, to our ideas of who we are supposed to be. We attach ourselves to moments of pleasure and desperately try to push away moments of pain. We cling to the past, and we anxiously grasp for a future we can control. These attachments are like invisible threads, and they have woven a tight net around our hearts, pulling us into a constant state of anxiety and dissatisfaction. The very things we believe will make us secure are the sources of our deepest insecurity, because they are, by their very nature, impermanent. But there is an ancient path, a way of seeing that does not ask for blind faith, or for you to become someone else. It is more of a science than a religion, a practical and profound exploration of the human mind. It offers a map, drawn from thousands of years of deep introspection, that shows us the source of these binding threads, and, more importantly, teaches us how to gently, compassionately, untie them. This journey we're about to take together is not an escape from your life or from the quiet of this night. It is a journey directly into it. It is an invitation to turn off the screen, to sit with the silence, and to discover a light that does not come from a device, but from the vast, peaceful space that lies waiting just beneath the surface of your restless mind. This is a path to freedom, not by gaining more, but by letting go. The journey inward often begins with a single word, a word that can feel heavy, even alienating. That word is suffering. In our modern vocabulary, suffering is a dramatic term, reserved for immense tragedy, for acute pain, for the kind of catastrophic loss that shatters a life. We think of it as an aberration, an unwelcome intruder in a life that is supposed to be happy, smooth, and successful. And so, when we first hear that the foundation of the Buddhist path is the truth of suffering, we might recoil. It can sound pessimistic, even morbid. We might think, my life isn't all suffering. I have moments of great joy, of love, of peace. This teaching is not for me. But this reaction is based on a profound misunderstanding, a translation of a single, ancient Pali word that holds a universe of meaning far more subtle, far more pervasive, and far more relevant to our daily lives than the English word suffering can convey. That word is dukkha. To understand dukkha is the first step in loosening the knots of our anxiety. Imagine it not as a gaping wound, but as a pebble in your shoe. You can still walk, you can still function, you can even run for a while, but with every step, there is a subtle friction, a persistent discomfort, a reminder that something is not quite right. Dukkha is this fundamental unsatisfactoriness, the low-grade hum of unease that so often forms the background music of our lives, even when everything on the surface seems fine. It is the fleeting nature of pleasure, the anxiety that lurks behind success, the feeling of being perpetually unfulfilled, as if we are always chasing a horizon that recedes as we approach. The Buddha's first noble truth was not a gloomy proclamation that life is misery. It was a clear, compassionate, and radically honest diagnosis of the human condition. It was an invitation to stop pretending, to stop running, and to look gently and directly at the nature of our own experience. To help us look, the teachings break down dukkha into three distinct, though overlapping types. The first is the one we already know well. It is called dukkha dukkha, or the suffering of suffering. This is the obvious pain. It is the headache that throbs in your temples, the sharp sting of a cruel word, the grief that hollows you out when you lose someone you love, It is physical illness, emotional heartache, the raw pain of failure, loneliness, and despair. This is the dukkha we spend most of our lives trying to avoid, to numb, to distract ourselves from. We build walls of comfort. We seek out endless entertainment. We do anything we can to not feel this direct and undeniable pain. It is the most visible echo in the valley of our existence, the one that shouts its presence. And while it is real and must be met with compassion, it is only the first layer. The second type of dukkha is far more subtle, and it is here that we begin to see the deep connection between suffering and our attachments. It is called viparinama dukkha, the suffering of change. This is the stress and anxiety that comes from the fact that nothing lasts. It is the pain inherent in pleasure itself. Think of a perfect summer evening with people you love. The air is warm, the conversation flows, there is laughter and a feeling of deep connection. It is a moment of genuine happiness. Yet, even within that perfect moment, there can be a subtle, underlying anxiety, a quiet voice that whispers, "This will end. The sun will set. The evening will close. People will go home." The very beauty of the moment is inseparable from its impermanence. The joy we feel is tinged with the knowledge of its passing. This is viparinama dukkha. It is the sadness of watching your children grow up, a bittersweet mixture of pride and loss. It is the anxiety of seeing your body age, of losing your youth and vitality. It is the disappointment that follows the thrill of a new purchase, when the novelty wears off and the object becomes just another thing you own. We suffer because we try to cling to the pleasant, to freeze moments in time, to build a solid fortress of happiness on the constantly shifting sands of reality. But reality is a river, not a rock. By its very nature, it flows and changes. Our attachment is the fist we make, trying to hold on to the water, and our suffering is the tension in that fist, the frustration of finding it empty again and again. The third type of dukkha is the deepest and most pervasive. It is called sankhara dukkha, the suffering of conditioned existence. This is the pebble in the shoe. It is that background hum of unsatisfactoriness that persists even when we are not in obvious pain and even when nothing pleasant is ending. It is the inherent stress of being a self, a composite entity that is constantly in flux. Our bodies, our feelings, our thoughts, our perceptions, they are all processes, not things. They arise and pass away from moment to moment. Yet we create and cling to an idea of a solid, permanent me at the center of it all. This project of maintaining a self is exhausting. We worry about our reputation. We defend our opinions. We are anxious about our future and regretful of our past. This sankhara dukkha is the friction of existence itself, the subtle stress of being a temporary collection of processes that is fundamentally unstable and dependent on countless conditions outside of our control. It is the feeling of being a wave in the ocean that has forgotten it is part of the ocean, and so it lives in constant fear of its own dissolution when it crashes upon the shore. There is a story that illustrates this truth more powerfully than any philosophical explanation. It is the story of a woman named Kisa Gotami. She lived in the time of the Buddha and had a life blessed with a singular, profound joy, her young son. He was the center of her universe. But one day, tragedy struck, and the boy fell ill and died. Kisa Gotami was consumed by a grief so powerful that it tipped into madness. Refusing to accept his death, she clasped the small, cold body to her chest and wandered through her village, going from door to door, begging for a medicine that could bring her son back to life. Some people mocked her, others turned away in pity, but no one could help. Finally, a compassionate old man saw her plight and suggested she go to see the one person who might have a cure, the Buddha. Clinging to this sliver of hope, she ran to the monastery and presented the body of her son, pleading with the Buddha to work a miracle. The Buddha looked at her not with pity, but with a deep and knowing compassion. He did not dismiss her. Instead, he told her that yes, he could help her, but first, she must bring him a single mustard seed. There was one condition. The seed had to come from a house where no one or no child, no parent, no spouse, no servant had ever died. Kisa Gotami's heart soared with hope. A mustard seed. That was so simple. She began her quest immediately, going from house to house in the village. At the first door, she asked, Do you have a mustard seed I can offer to the master for a medicine? Of course, the woman of the house replied, bringing out a handful. As Kisagutami reached for it, she remembered the condition. Wait, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Has anyone in this house ever died? The woman's face fell. Oh, lady, she said softly. The living are few, but the dead are many. Just last year, I lost my husband. With a heavy heart, Kisagutami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. We can give you 1,000 mustard seeds, but our beloved father died here. Take all you want, but our youngest child was taken from us. This house has seen generations of death. She went through the entire village, and then to the next, but she could not find a single home untouched by loss. As the sun began to set, she sat down by the side of the road, the body of her son still in her arms. She watched the flickering lamps of the village being lit, only to be extinguished a few hours later. And in that moment, a profound understanding dawned in her heart. She was not alone in her grief. The pain she felt, this devastating loss, was not a unique curse visited only upon her. It was the shared, universal inheritance of all human beings. Her sorrow was the sorrow of the world. In that moment of acceptance, she was able to let go, not of her love for her son, but of her frantic, isolating attachment to his life. She understood. She went and buried her child, and then returned to the Buddha, not to ask for a miracle, but to ask for a way to understand. The Buddha did not heal her by erasing her pain. He healed her by guiding her to the truth of dukkha in its deepest sense. He showed her that her suffering was not a personal failure, but a shared reality. By accepting this first noble truth, by looking squarely at the nature of life and death, change and loss, she took the first step on the path to true peace. This is the invitation of the first noble truth. It is not a call to despair. It is a call to courage, to honesty, and to compassion, for ourselves and for all others who walk this path with us. It is the doctor's diagnosis, delivered with kindness, that allows the real healing to begin. And now that we have looked honestly at the diagnosis, we must, with the same courage, look for its cause. For if we can understand where the echo in the valley comes from, we can begin to find the profound silence that lies just behind it. Having faced the diagnosis, the truth of dukkha, we do not turn away in despair. Instead, we lean in closer, with the calm curiosity of a scientist. A diagnosis is only the first step. To find a cure, we must understand the cause. If dukkha, in all its forms, is the persistent echo of discontent in the valley of our lives, the second noble truth asks us to find the source of that echo. It guides us to look for the initial cry that sets the whole thing in motion. The Buddha identified this source with unwavering clarity. He said the origin of suffering is samudaya, and its driving force is a single, powerful, and deeply ingrained habit of the mind. That habit is called tanha. The word tanha is often translated as craving or desire, but its original meaning in the Pali language is more visceral, more primal. It means thirst. Think of the desperate, all-consuming nature of a powerful thirst. It is not a gentle preference. It is a commanding urge that hijacks your attention and propels you into action. It is this very quality of demanding, urgent, and restless energy that defines the nature of tanha. It is the engine of our suffering, the motor that drives the endless cycle of seeking and dissatisfaction. This thirst is not just for things we can taste or touch. It is a deep, existential thirst, and it manifests in three distinct streams that feed the river of our dukkha. The first and most familiar stream is kamatana, the thirst for sense pleasures. This is the craving for anything that delights our six senses: the sight of a beautiful face, the sound of enchanting music, the smell of a favorite meal, the taste of sweet fruit, the feeling of a soft blanket, and, most powerfully in our age, the pleasure of a stimulating thought or idea. This is the thirst that keeps our hand reaching for the next cookie, our eyes glued to the screen for the next episode, our fingers scrolling for the next hit of validation in the form of a like or a positive comment. It is the constant pursuit of the pleasant. We organize our lives around it, chasing after these fleeting moments of sensory gratification, believing that if we could just string enough of them together, we would finally be happy. But the very nature of sense pleasure is that it is temporary. The taste of the cookie fades. The thrill of the purchase wears off. The beautiful sunset gives way to darkness. Because the pleasure is impermanent, the thirst for it is insatiable. The moment one pleasure ends, the thirst arises again, seeking its next object. We become like ghosts, with mouths too small for our enormous hunger, constantly feeding but never nourished. The second stream of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is bhava tanha, the thirst for existence, the craving to be or to become. This is the powerful, underlying drive to solidify our identity, to establish our ego in the world, to prove that we exist and that our existence matters. It is the ambition that whispers, "You must be successful, you must be respected, you must be loved." It is the craving to create and maintain a story about ourselves, the story of the good parent, the brilliant artist, the powerful executive, the enlightened spiritual seeker. We cling to these identities as if they were solid ground, but they are just constellations of thoughts. This thirst for becoming is what fuels our obsession with legacy, our fear of being forgotten. It is the deep desire for our personal wave to somehow avoid crashing back into the ocean. It even fuels our ideas of an eternal afterlife, a perpetual continuation of this I that we cherish so dearly. We thirst for permanence in a universe defined by change, and this fundamental conflict between our desire and reality is a profound source of our background anxiety, our sankhara dukkha. The third stream may seem paradoxical, but it flows from the same source. It is vibhava tanha, the thirst for non-existence, the craving for annihilation. When the pain of existence becomes too great, when we are faced with a feeling or a situation that feels unbearable, a powerful thirst can arise to simply make it go away. This is the energy of aversion, of pushing away. In its most extreme form, it is the suicidal urge, the desire to annihilate the self to escape its pain. But it manifests in far more common ways. It is the craving to numb our anxiety with alcohol or drugs. It is the impulse to distract ourselves from our sadness with mindless busywork or entertainment. It is the anger that wants to destroy the person or thing that is causing us pain. It is the simple wish that this moment, this feeling, this reality would just not be. We crave annihilation for the unpleasant, just as fiercely as we crave continuation for the pleasant. Both are forms of tanha, both are violent reactions against the present moment as it is. Whether we are desperately pulling something towards us or desperately pushing it away, we are caught in the same exhausting struggle, bound by the same chains of thirst. This constant push and pull is the very mechanism of our suffering. A feeling arises. If it is pleasant, the thirst to hold on to it, bhava tanha, kicks in. We grasp it, creating tension. When it inevitably changes and fades, we experience the pain of loss, viparinama dukkha. If the feeling is unpleasant, the thirst for it to not exist, vibhava tanha, takes over. We resist it, we fight it, creating anger, fear, and hatred. This resistance is a second arrow, a layer of self-created suffering piled on top of the original, unavoidable pain. In this way, we become puppets, and our feelings are the puppeteers. Our peace of mind becomes entirely conditional, dependent on getting what we want and avoiding what we don't. We are never truly free. There is a classic story from the East that perfectly captures our predicament. Hunters in India developed a clever way to trap monkeys. They would take a coconut or a hollowed-out gourd and drill a hole in it just large enough for a monkey's open hand to fit through. Inside, they would place some sweet rice or nuts, a treat the monkeys found irresistible. They would then tie the gourd to a tree and wait. Soon enough, a monkey would come along, smell the delicious treat, and slip its hand through the narrow opening. It would grasp a big fistful of the rice, but when it tried to pull its hand out, the fist, now larger than the hole, would be stuck. A strange dilemma arises. The monkey is physically free. It is not being held. The trap is not the gourd. The trap is the monkey's own clenched fist. The hunters would begin to approach, and the monkey would shriek and pull, frantically trying to escape, but it could not. The one thing that would save it, the simple act of unclenching its fist, of letting go of the rice ice, the one thing it's craving, its tanha, will not allow it to do. And so, it is captured, a prisoner of its own desire. We are that monkey. The gourd is the world of conditions. The sweet rice is the fleeting pleasure, the cherished identity, the painful memory we nurse. the rigid opinion we defend. It is anything we grasp onto, believing it will bring us happiness or security. Our fist is our attachment, our clinging mind, and our suffering, our anxiety, our feeling of being trapped in life is the frantic, useless pulling against the trap of our own making. Freedom is always available. The ability to open our hand is always present. But we have become so identified with the object of our craving that we would rather be captured than let it go. It is here that we must make a vital distinction, one that is crucial for our journey. Letting go of this clinging thirst is not the same as letting go of love. Buddhism does not teach a cold, passionless indifference. In fact, it teaches the very opposite. The attachment born of tanha is not true love. It is a transaction. It is a state of need. I need you to make me happy. I need you to be a certain way for my security. My happiness depends on you. This kind of love is rooted in fear. The fear of being alone. The fear of loss. It is possessive and conditional. It seeks to own. True love, the kind the path cultivates, which is called metta, or loving kindness, is the very opposite. It is an unconditional wish for the well-being of another, independent of what they do for you. It does not grasp, it gives. It does not seek to possess, it seeks to liberate. Attachment says, I love you, so I want you to stay with me. True love says, I love you, so I want you to be happy, whether you are with me or not. The release of tanha allows this purer, more expansive and fearless love to flourish. And so, we see the source. Our dukkha does not come from the outside world. It does not come from other people or from our circumstances. It comes from within. It is born from this deep, restless, and demanding thirst. This is the second noble truth. It is not an accusation, but a revelation. It is empowering. By seeing the cause, we are no longer helpless victims of a mysterious ailment. We are like a patient who has just been told that their illness is not random, but is caused by a specific, identifiable agent. The discovery of the cause is the beginning of hope. It immediately raises the most important question of all. If our suffering is caused by this thirst, is it possible to be free from this thirst? Can this fire of craving be quenched? The answer to that question is a resounding yes, and it points us toward the third noble truth, toward the shore of peace that lies on the other side of this turbulent ocean of desire. We have walked together into the valley of our own experience and listened to its echo, the persistent hum of dukkha. We have stood before the source of that echo, the relentless, driving thirst of tanha. It is easy, at this point, to feel a sense of resignation, to look at the power of this thirst and believe it to be an inescapable part of who we are. We might think, this is just human nature. We are wired to crave and to cling. There is no way out. This is the moment where the entire journey pivots. It is the point where the Buddha's teaching ceases to be a mere description of our predicament and becomes a declaration of our potential. This is the third noble truth, the truth of Nirodha, the truth of cessation. It is the most hopeful, radical, and liberating message you may ever hear. The thirst can be quenched, the fire can be put out, the suffering can end. This is not a statement of blind faith. It is a conclusion of impeccable logic. If a fire is burning because it has fuel and oxygen, what happens when you remove the fuel and cut off the oxygen? The fire ceases. It is not a miracle, it is a natural consequence. In the same way, if our mental suffering, our dukkha, arises from a specific cause, the thirst of tanha, then it follows with absolute certainty that when tanha is uprooted and ceases to arise, dukkha also ceases. This is the essence of Nirodha. It is the end of the struggle, the laying down of the burden, the final untying of the knot, and the state that is revealed when the struggle ends, the peace that is uncovered when the fires of craving are extinguished, is called nirvana. Perhaps no word from the spiritual traditions of the East is more famous and more misunderstood than nirvana. In the popular imagination, it has become a kind of hazy, blissed-out heaven, a paradise of eternal pleasure where we float on clouds forever. Or, it is seen as a state of complete annihilation, a cosmic vanishing act where the self is utterly extinguished into nothingness. Both of these ideas miss the profound psychological reality of what nirvana truly is. It is not a place you go to after you die. It is not an escape from life. Nirvana is a state of mind, a way of being that is accessible to you right here, in this very life, in this very body. It is the natural state of the mind when it is no longer feverish with the fires of greed, hatred, and delusion. Let us look at the word itself. The Sanskrit word nirvana, or nibbana in Pali, is derived from a root that means to blow out, as one blows out a candle flame. The image is one of cooling, of release, of peace. But what, exactly, is being blown out? It is not the flame of life itself. It is not the flame of awareness or joy. What are extinguished are the three poisons, the toxic fuels that feed the fire of dukkha. The first is the fire of greed, craving, and obsessive desire, a restless tanha. The second is the fire of hatred, anger, and aversion, a violent resistance to reality. And the third, the very root of the other two, is the fire of delusion, the fundamental ignorance that misperceives reality, that sees permanence in what is fleeting, that sees a solid self where there is only a flowing process. These three fires are what keep us in a state of agitation. They are what make us feel hot, bothered, and perpetually restless. Nirvana is the state of coolness and profound peace that is realized when this burning has ceased. Imagine, for a moment, a simple clay oil lamp. The flame burns brightly, but it also sputters and flickers. It consumes fuel the oiland. It clings to its wick. This flickering, dependent, consuming flame is like our ordinary mind, caught in the grip of dukkha. It is agitated, unstable, and constantly needing to be fed by the fuel of sensory experience and the wick of our clinging ego. Now, imagine that you stop adding oil. The existing fuel is slowly, naturally consumed. The wick burns down. Finally, with a last gentle flicker, the flame goes out. Now, we must ask the most important question. Where did the flame go? Did it travel north or south or east or west? Was it stored in a box? Of course not. The question itself makes no sense. The flame did not go anywhere. It simply ceased to exist because the conditions that gave rise to it, the fuel, the wick, the oxygen, were no longer present. The cessation of the flame was not a journey to a new location. It was a transformation of state, from burning to peace, from agitation to stillness. This is the perfect metaphor for nirvana. Nirvana is not a place we go to. It is the state of mind that is revealed when the fuel of tanha is no longer supplied, when the wick of the ego is no longer clung to. The mind does not vanish. The person does not cease to exist. On the contrary, for the first time, the person is able to exist in a state of true freedom and clarity. The suffering, the agitation, the fever that is what vanishes. What is left is the mind's natural, luminous, and peaceful essence, which was there all along, just obscured by the smoke and heat of the fires. So what does this state feel like? It is said to be beyond words, because our language is born from a world of dualities, of likes and dislikes, of self and other. But we can use pointers, metaphors, to hint at the experience. Firstly, it is a state of profound freedom. It is the freedom of the monkey that has finally unclenched its fist and walked away from the trap. It is freedom from the tyranny of our own reactive habits. Freedom from being jerked around by every pleasant or unpleasant sensation. Freedom from the exhausting, lifelong project of defending and promoting a fragile sense of self. Secondly, it is a state of unshakable peace. This is not the temporary peace of a quiet afternoon or a relaxing vacation, which can be shattered by a single phone call. It is a deep, abiding stillness that lies beneath the surface of life's inevitable ups and downs. It is the peace of the deep ocean, which remains utterly silent and undisturbed, no matter how turbulent the waves on the surface may be. A person who has touched this peace can still experience sadness, can still face challenges, but these experiences no longer have the power to overwhelm them. They are like waves that rise and fall on the surface of a vast and tranquil sea. Thirdly, it is a state of luminous clarity, when the mind is no longer distorted by the filters of craving, I want this, and aversion, I hate this. It can see things as they truly are. It sees the impermanent nature of all phenomena without resisting it. It sees the interconnectedness of all life. It sees without the distorting lens of the ego. This is wisdom, not as an intellectual accumulation of facts, but as a direct, intuitive perception of reality. This, then, is the promise of the third noble truth. It is the North Star of our spiritual journey. It tells us that our chains are not forged of an unbreakable metal. They are woven from the threads of our own habits, and they can be unraveled. It tells us that our prison is not made of stone walls, but of our own perceptions, and the door is not locked. Our fundamental nature is not suffering. Our fundamental nature is freedom. Dukkha is an addition, a fever that can be cured. Nirvana is the health that is revealed when the fever breaks. This truth transforms the entire path. It is no longer a grim catalogue of suffering, but a practical and optimistic roadmap to the highest possible happiness. It provides the why for our practice. We meditate, we cultivate mindfulness, we practice kindness, not as empty rituals, but because we have understood that there is a state of profound well-being that is possible. And these are the tools to get there. The diagnosis has been made, the cause has been identified, and now the prognosis has been given, and it is one of complete recovery. A new, urgent question naturally arises in the heart. If this freedom is possible, how do I attain it? If there is a far shore, free from suffering, how do I build the raft to get there? This question leads us directly to the final and most practical of the Four Noble Truths, the path itself. We have arrived at a place of profound hope. We have seen that the unease of our lives, the pervasive sense of dukkha, is not a fundamental flaw in our being, but a treatable condition. We have looked its cause directly in the eye, the relentless, driving thirst of tanha, and we have glimpsed the possibility of a cure, the cool, peaceful shore of nirodha, the state of nirvana, where the fires of craving have been extinguished. The diagnosis has been made, the cause identified, and the prognosis given. A final, urgent question now hangs in the air, the most practical and personal question of all. What is the prescription? What is the path we must walk to travel from the shore of suffering to the shore of peace? The answer to this question is the culmination of the Buddha's teaching. It is the fourth noble truth, the truth of the path, known in Pali as Magga. This is not a vague suggestion to simply be good or think positive. It is a clear, comprehensive, and detailed blueprint for human flourishing. It is a design for living that, when cultivated, systematically dismantles the causes of suffering and reveals the freedom that is our birthright. This path is called the Noble Eightfold Path, and it is the very heart of Buddhist practice. It is the raft that carries us across the river. At first, hearing the words Eightfold Path can seem daunting. It may sound like a rigid list of 8 sequential commandments that must be perfected one by one. But this is not the case at all. The path is not a ladder, it is more like a woven cable. It is composed of 8 individual strands, and each strand is intimately intertwined with all the others. The strength of the cable comes from the integrity of every strand working together. You do not perfect one before moving to the next. Rather, you cultivate all 8 simultaneously, and as one strengthens, it naturally supports and reinforces the others. Progress on the path is a holistic unfolding, a gradual ripening of our entire being. This path is also described as the middle way. To understand this, we must remember the Buddha's own story. Before his enlightenment, he spent years as an ascetic, practicing extreme forms of self-mortification. He starved his body until his ribs protruded like a picket fence. He held his breath until he felt excruciating pains in his head. He exposed himself to the harshest elements, believing that by conquering the body, he could liberate the spirit. But this path of extreme denial only led to exhaustion. It weakened his body and clouded his mind, bringing him no closer to wisdom. He realized that torturing oneself was a dead end, a path of extreme tension, like a musical instrument strung so tightly that the strings are bound to snap. He also knew, from his earlier life as a prince, that the opposite extreme was equally fruitless. A life given over to the relentless pursuit of sensual pleasure-fine foods, luxurious comforts, constant entertainment, only to a deeper, more insatiable thirst. It was a path of laxity, like a lute string so loose that it produces no sound at all. True clarity, he discovered, lay in a path that skillfully navigated between these two extremes. It was the middle way. He illustrated this with the beautiful simile of the lute. A musician knows that to produce a beautiful resonant sound, the string must be tuned perfectly. Not too tight, or it will break. Not too loose, or it will be silent. It must be tuned with balance, with wisdom, with a sensitive touch. The Noble Eightfold Path is precisely this: a way of life that is balanced, wise, and skillfully tuned. It avoids the pain of self-torture and the emptiness of self-indulgence, guiding us instead toward a state of productive, peaceful, and clear-sighted living. To make this comprehensive path more understandable, the 8 strands are traditionally grouped into 3 essential categories of training. This is known as the threefold training, and it provides the fundamental structure for our journey. The 3 trainings are ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. The first training, the foundation of the entire path, is ethical conduct, or sila in Pali. This is the training in how we engage with the world, how we behave in our daily lives. It is about purifying our actions of body and speech so that they cause no harm to ourselves or to others. Why does the path begin here? Because it is impossible to cultivate a calm and concentrated mind if your life is filled with conflict, guilt, and remorse. By living ethically, we create a life of blamelessness. Our mind is not agitated by the memory of a harmful word or a dishonest deed. Sila creates an external environment of peace and an internal environment of calm, which are the necessary soil in which the seeds of meditation can grow. The strands of the path that fall under this training are right speech, right action, and right livelihood. The second training is mental discipline, or samadhi, with the foundation of a peaceful and ethical life established through sila. We can now turn inward to work directly with the mind. This is the heart of meditation. It is the training of taming the wild, untamed monkey mind that constantly jumps from thought to thought. Here, we develop the mental muscles of focus, awareness, presence, and stability. We learn to gather our scattered attention and sustain it with a gentle, persistent effort. Through this training, the mind, which was once like a turbulent and muddy lake, gradually becomes still and clear. Samadhi forges our consciousness into a powerful and precise instrument, capable of deep and sustained inquiry. The strands of the path that constitute this training are right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The third and final training is wisdom, or panya. This is the ultimate purpose of the path. Once we have a foundation of ethical living, sila, and a mind that is calm and sharp, samadhi, we can then use that mind to see reality clearly. Wisdom is not about accumulating intellectual knowledge or believing in a dogma. It is the direct, experiential insight into the true nature of things. It is seeing for ourselves the truth of impermanence, the reality of dukkha, and the illusion of a solid, separate self. This is the clear seeing that cuts through the root of our suffering, the fire of delusion. Panya is what liberates us. The 2 strands of the path that make up this training are right view and right intention. While they are listed as the first 2, their full flowering is the culmination of the path, and at the same time, a preliminary understanding of them is what guides us from the very beginning. So, the 8 strands weave together into this beautiful, comprehensive whole. We start by cultivating right view, a basic understanding of our predicament and the path to freedom. This gives rise to right intention, the motivation to tread the path with kindness and compassion. This intention guides us to purify our right speech, our right action, and our right livelihood, establishing the foundation of sila. Upon this foundation, we apply right effort to our practice, cultivating right mindfulness, a moment-to-moment awareness, which leads to right concentration, a deep and stable focus. And from within this state of profound concentration, true wisdom, a deeper and more transformative right view, arises, liberating the heart. Each part supports every other part in a beautiful, upward spiral of clarity and peace. This path is not an abstract ideal to be admired from afar. It is a set of practical skills to be developed in the messy, complicated reality of our daily lives. It takes our entire life, our work, our relationships, our thoughts, our words, and transforms it into a vehicle for awakening. It is a journey that begins not by taking a great leap, but by taking a single conscious step in the right direction. And on any journey, the most important factor is our orientation. our map, our sense of direction, we must first know where we are going. Therefore, the entire Noble Eightfold Path is said to begin with and be guided by its very first factor. It begins with seeing things correctly. It begins with right view. We stand now at the beginning of the path itself, at the trailhead of the most profound journey we can ever take. And like any traveler setting out into a vast and unknown territory, the first thing we need is a reliable map, a compass that points true north. On the Noble Eightfold Path, this map, this guiding light, this fundamental orientation for the entire journey is called Samma Ditthiti, or right view. It is placed first for a reason. Everything else we do, every action we take, every word we speak, every moment we spend in meditation is conditioned by the way we see the world. If our view is clouded, confused, or distorted, our efforts will be misguided and we will wander in circles. If our view is clear, we can walk with confidence, our steps purposeful and sure, moving steadily in the direction of freedom. But what is this right view? It is essential, first, to understand what it is not. It is not a dogma. It is not a list of beliefs that you are required to accept on blind faith. The Buddha was not a god demanding obedience. He was a guide pointing the way. He repeatedly encouraged his students to question everything, including his own words, and to test the teachings against their own direct experience. Right view is not a rigid ideology that we use to build a wall between ourselves and others, judging those who do not share our perspective. It is not merely an intellectual understanding, the ability to recite philosophical concepts. A biologist who can label every part of a flower, but has never been moved by its beauty, has a certain kind of knowledge, but not a deep understanding. In the same way, knowing the theory behind right view is not the same as embodying it. So what is it then? Right view is best understood as a working hypothesis, a lens through which to look at our lives. The Buddha offers us this lens and says, try this. Look at your experience through this framework and see if it doesn't start to make more sense. See if it doesn't align with what you discover in your quietest, most honest moments. Do not believe it because I say so. Believe it because you see for yourself that it is true. It is an invitation to become a scientist of your own inner world, using your own life as the laboratory. At its most basic level, right view is the clear comprehension of the Four Noble Truths. It is the view that sees, yes, there is a fundamental unsatisfactoriness, a dukkha, in conditioned existence. Yes, I can see that this dukkha is fueled by my own craving and clinging, my tanha. And yes, because it has a cause, its cessation, nirodha, must be possible. And finally, yes, there is a path, a magga, that leads to that cessation. This framework is the basic diagnosis and the proposed treatment plan. To accept this as a working model for your life is the first step in right view. It moves us from being a confused victim of our circumstances to being an empowered participant in our own healing. From this foundation, right view expands to include an understanding of the law of karma, or karma. This is another concept that is widely misunderstood in the West, often seen as a cosmic system of reward and punishment meted out by some unseen judge. The Buddhist understanding is far more simple, psychological, and immediate. Karma simply means action, and the law of karma is the law of cause and effect as it applies to our intentional actions. It states that our intentions have consequences. Actions motivated by the three poisons greed, hatred, and delusion are considered unwholesome. They inevitably lead to painful and agitated states of mind for ourselves and for others. They are the seeds of suffering. Actions motivated by their opposites, generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, are considered wholesome. They are the seeds of happiness, peace, and liberation for ourselves and all those we touch. This is not a mystical belief. It is something we can observe directly. When you act out of anger, does it lead to peace or to more conflict? When you act with genuine generosity, does it leave you feeling impoverished or enriched? Understanding the law of karma is right view because it gives us a profound sense of agency and responsibility. We are not pawns of fate. We are the architects of our experience. The future is not a fixed destiny waiting for us. It is a fluid potential that is being shaped by the quality of our thoughts, words, and deeds in this very moment. Every moment offers a choice to plant a seed of suffering or a seed of well-being. Right view is simply seeing this choice clearly. As we walk the path, our view deepens, moving from a conceptual understanding to a direct intuitive insight. This deeper level of right view is the experiential understanding of what are known as the three marks of existence, the three universal characteristics of all conditioned phenomena. These are anicca, impermanence, dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, not self. We see directly, not just as a theory, that everything is in a state of flux, anicca. We see that our thoughts, our emotions, our very bodies are arising and passing away moment by moment. We see that because everything is impermanent, trying to find ultimate, lasting security in anything that changes is inherently stressful and unsatisfactory, dukkha. And this leads to the most profound and liberating insight of all, anatta, or not, self. When we use the sharpened mind developed through meditation to look deeply into our own experience, we make a startling discovery. We cannot find a solid, continuous, independent self anywhere. We look at the body. Is this myself? It changes, it ages, it gets sick. It is not fully under my command. It cannot be my true self. We look at our feelings. Are they myself? They are like clouds passing in the sky, constantly shifting. We look at our thoughts. Are they myself? They arise and vanish, often without our permission. We are a process, not a thing. The self we so fiercely protect is a story, a collection of habits, memories, and ideas, woven together from moment to moment. Seeing this directly doesn't annihilate us, it liberates us. When there is no fixed, solid self to defend, who is there to be insulted? When there is no core entity to aggrandize, what is the purpose of envy or pride? The heaviest burden we carry is the burden of this me, and the insight of anatta allows us to finally set it down. There is a famous Indian parable that perfectly illustrates the journey from wrong view to right view. A king once brought an elephant into his courtyard and assembled a group of men who had been blind from birth. He asked them to each approach the elephant, touch it, and describe what it was. The first man reached out and felt the elephant's thick, sturdy leg. "Your Majesty," he proclaimed, "an elephant is like a great pillar." The second man happened to take hold of the tail. "No," he argued, "an elephant is clearly like a rope." A third man touched the wide, flat ear and declared, "You are both wrong. An elephant is like a massive fan." A fourth grasped the hard, smooth tusk and said, "An elephant is like a plowshare." Soon, they were all shouting at each other, each one absolutely convinced of their own partial experience, each one certain the others were fools. We are those blind men. Our ordinary, unexamined consciousness, clouded by the cataracts of greed, hatred, and ignorance, only ever perceives a small fragment of reality. We mistake our feelings for the whole truth. We mistake our opinions for undeniable facts. We mistake our fleeting sense of self for a permanent soul. And then, we spend our lives arguing with others who have touched a different part of the elephant, defending our own limited perspective, as if it were the ultimate reality. Right view is the process of healing our blindness. It is the gradual, patient, and courageous cultivation of the ability to see the whole elephant. It is seeing that the leg, the tail, the ear, and the tusk are all parts of a larger, interconnected reality. It is the dustless mirror that reflects the world just as it is, without the distortions of our fears and desires. It is learning to step outside of the narrow, claustrophobic prison of our own stories and to rest in the wide open space of what is actually happening. This view is the compass that guides every other step, for if we are to align our hearts and minds with reality, we must first learn to see it clearly. And so, with our compass in hand, we can now turn to the next step, ensuring that our motivation, our will, our deepest intention is pointing in the same direction as our view. Having found our bearings with right view, we now possess the map for our journey. We can see the landscape of our experience with greater clarity, the terrain of dukkha, the source of its waters in tanha, the distant peaceful shore of nirodha, and the path that leads there. But a map, no matter how accurate, is useless if we do not actively choose to follow it. We need to engage our will, our heart, our deepest motivations. This is the role of the second step on the path, samma sankappa, or right intention. If right view is the eye that sees the destination, right intention is the foot that takes the first step. It is the rudder that steers the ship of our life, aligning our every impulse with the wisdom we have begun to see. To understand right intention, it is helpful to think of the mind as a garden. For much of our lives, we have been absentee gardeners. We have allowed the seeds of thought, carried on the winds of circumstance and social conditioning, to land and sprout as they please. Our inner landscape is often a tangled mess of weeds, the thorny bushes of anger, the clinging vines of craving, the poisonous nightshades of jealousy and fear. Here and there, a few beautiful flowers of love and joy may struggle to find the sun. To practice right intention is to decide, for the first time, to become a conscious and compassionate gardener of this inner world. It is the deliberate choice to cultivate the beautiful flowers and nourishing plants, and to gently, without violence, remove the weeds, or at least stop watering them. It is the most creative and empowering work we can do, for the thoughts we cultivate today will become the actions of tomorrow and the reality of the day after. Right intention is not a vague wish to be a better person. It is a very specific and practical training of the mind, focused on replacing unwholesome, suffering-producing intentions with wholesome, liberating ones. The teachings divide this practice into three essential categories, three types of wholesome thoughts we are invited to cultivate. The first is the intention of renunciation. The word renunciation can sound severe, conjuring images of self-denial and a joyless, austere life. But this is a misunderstanding. Renunciation on this path does not mean renouncing the world. It means renouncing our attachment to the world. It is the letting go of the feverish, desperate clinging to sense pleasures as our only source of happiness. It is the wise intention to free ourselves from the slavery of craving. It's a shift in perspective from a mind that constantly asks, "What can I get?" to a mind that asks, "What can I let go of to find peace?" It is seeing the bait, but also seeing the hook. The bait's fleeting pleasure of a new purchase, a flattering compliment, a delicious taste, momentarily pleasant. But the wise gardener of the mind sees the hook hidden within it, the anxiety of wanting more, the disappointment when it ends, the envy of others who have it. The intention of renunciation is the choice to value the lasting peace of non-dependency over the temporary thrill of gratification. It is the turning of the heart away from the noisy, crowded marketplace of the senses toward the quiet, spacious sanctuary within. The second form of right intention is the intention of goodwill. This is the direct and powerful antidote to the poison of ill will, anger, resentment, and hatred. Goodwill, or abhyapada, is not merely the absence of anger. It is an active, warm, and benevolent energy. It is the sincere wish for the happiness and well-being of all living things, without exception. It is like the sun, which shines its warmth on saints and sinners, on friends and enemies, on the beautiful rose and the humble weed alike. To cultivate the intention of goodwill is to consciously replace the cold, contracting energy of resentment with the warm, expansive energy of friendliness. When someone harms us and a thought of revenge arises, we notice it, and instead of watering that poisonous seed, we consciously plant a different one beside it. May you be free from the anger that caused you to act this way. May you find peace. This practice begins, most importantly, with ourselves. For many of us, the harshest critic, the most relentless enemy, lives within our own mind. To cultivate goodwill is to learn to extend this friendliness inward, to forgive our own mistakes, and to wish for our own happiness as earnestly as we wish for that of others. The third form of right intention is the intention of harmlessness, or compassion. This is the antidote to cruelty and violence in all its forms, both subtle and overt. Harmlessness, or avihisa, is the resolve to refrain from causing suffering to any living creature to the best of our ability. It is a deep recognition that every being, from the smallest insect to the most powerful human, shares the same fundamental desire to live and to avoid pain. This intention naturally blossoms into compassion, or karuna, which is the heart's active response to seeing suffering. While goodwill is the wish for others to be happy, compassion is the wish for them to be free from their pain. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of dukkha. When we cultivate the intention of harmlessness, we become a safe harbor in the world. People and animals feel at ease in our presence because they sense, on a deep level, that we wish them no harm. This intention purifies our every action, ensuring that our presence on this earth is a source of peace, not of pain. There is a timeless story, attributed to the Cherokee people, that beautifully illustrates the power of right intention. An elder is teaching his grandson about life. He says, "A fight is going on inside me. It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil, he is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego." He continued, "The other is good, he is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The same fight is going on inside you, and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute, and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." This is the very essence of right intention. Our thoughts are the food for the wolves within us. For years, we have been unconsciously feeding them both, often giving the most food to the dark wolf of fear and anger through our habitual patterns of worry and resentment. The practice of right intention is the conscious decision to stop feeding the dark wolf. We don't have to fight it or kill it. That would just be another form of violence. We simply stop giving it our energy. We stop indulging the resentful story. We stop replaying the fearful fantasy. And instead, we turn our attention and we deliberately, consciously, feed the wolf of light. We choose to cultivate a thought of gratitude. We choose to offer a silent blessing to a stranger. We choose to remember a moment of joy. We choose to forgive. Each wholesome thought is a morsel of food for the white wolf. At first, it may feel weak, and the dark wolf's howls may seem overpowering. But with consistent practice, with the patient and persistent application of right intention, the white wolf grows stronger, its voice becomes clearer, and its presence begins to fill our inner world with light and peace. This is not a practice for one day a week, or for a few minutes on a meditation cushion. It is the work of every moment. It is the choice we face when someone cuts us off in traffic. Do we feed the wolf of anger or the wolf of patience? It is the choice we face when we see the success of another. Do we feed the wolf of envy or the wolf of appreciative joy? Right intention is about making these choices with our eyes open. It is the gentle, constant steering of the mind away from the thorny paths of ill will and craving and onto the open, pleasant meadows of kindness and letting go. When we tend this inner garden with care, the result is inevitable. The seeds of wholesome intention, once they have taken root in the soil of the mind, will naturally sprout and blossom, expressing themselves in the outer world through what we say and what we do. Having set our course with right view and engaged our will with right intention, we now venture deeper into the heart of wisdom. We begin to look at the world not just with our intellect, but with a quiet, sustained attention. And the first universal truth that this clear-eyed seeing reveals is perhaps the most obvious, yet the one we most persistently deny. It is the truth of anicca, the universal law of impermanence. We are told that the only certainties in life are death and taxes, but there is a truth far more immediate and pervasive, the certainty of change. Everything, without exception, is in a state of constant flux. Intellectually, we know this. We see the seasons turn, we watch our children grow, we witness empires rise and fall. We know that this day will end, this feeling will pass, this very breath will cease. Yet, emotionally, we live our lives as if this were not true. We construct our entire existence as a fortress against the tide of change. We build solid houses, we seek secure jobs, we accumulate possessions, we form relationships that we hope will last forever. We strive to create a small island of permanence in the midst of a boundless, flowing ocean. Our suffering arises from this fundamental conflict. It is the friction between our deep-seated desire for security and permanence and the universe's absolute, non-negotiable law of impermanence. We try to build a dam in the middle of a flowing river, and then we are exhausted by the constant effort of holding back the water and shattered when the dam inevitably breaks. This attachment to permanence is the root of so much of our dukkha. We cling to our youth, and so we suffer when we see the first grey hair or wrinkle. We cling to a perfect moment of happiness, a family vacation or a romantic evening, and so we suffer when it ends, trying desperately to recapture a past that no longer exists. We cling to a cherished identity, as a successful professional or a healthy individual, and so we suffer immensely when we lose our job or receive a difficult diagnosis. We are like a person clinging to a log in a river, believing it to be a solid pier. We exhaust ourselves holding on, while the current of reality pulls us relentlessly downstream. The wisdom of Anika does not ask us to stop the river. It invites us to let go of the log and learn how to swim. We do not need to look far to see this truth. We can experience it directly, in this very moment. Bring your attention to your breath. Notice the sensation of the air entering your nostrils, filling your lungs. It lasts for just a moment, and then it ceases. The out-breath begins, lasts for a moment, and it too ceases. It is a gentle, continuous rhythm of arising and passing away, a microcosm of all life. You cannot hold on to an in-breath. To do so would be to suffocate. Life requires that you let it go. Now, turn your attention to the sensations in your body. Perhaps you feel a warmth in your hands, an itch on your arm, a pressure where you are sitting. Do not try to change them. Simply watch. The itch may intensify, and then it vanishes. The warmth may fade. Every sensation is a brief flicker of energy, arising and passing in the field of your awareness. And what of your mind? Your thoughts and emotions are the most ephemeral of all phenomena. One moment, a memory from childhood appears, unbidden. The next, a worry about tomorrow. A feeling of boredom arises, and then a flash of joy, then a wave of sadness. They are like clouds moving across the vast sky of your awareness. We cause ourselves so much pain by trying to grab onto the fluffy white clouds of happiness and push away the dark, stormy clouds of sorrow. But no cloud ever stays. The sky does not cling to the white clouds or fight the dark ones. It allows them all to come and go freely. To understand impermanence is to learn to be the sky, to witness the weather of our minds with a spacious and accepting presence. When we first encounter this teaching, it can feel frightening. If nothing lasts, what is the point? If everything I love will eventually be lost, isn't that a recipe for despair? But this is a partial view, the view of the dark wolf. The truth is that impermanence is also the source of our greatest hope. It is, in fact, the best news in the world. For if everything is impermanent, then suffering is also impermanent. The most excruciating pain, the most profound grief, the deepest despair, these states are not permanent. They too will change. The dark cloud will pass. The frozen ground of sorrow will thaw. This truth does not invalidate our pain, but it assures us that we will not be stuck in it forever. It is the promise of a new morning after the longest night. Furthermore, impermanence is what makes growth, healing, and transformation possible. If we were fixed and unchanging, a past mistake would define us forever. We could never learn, never become kinder, never forgive, never heal from our traumas. The fact that we are in constant flux means that at every moment we have the opportunity to change. We can choose to stop feeding the wolf of anger and begin feeding the wolf of compassion. A block of marble can become a beautiful sculpture only because it is changeable. A seed can become a magnificent tree only because it is programmed for transformation. We too have this capacity for beautiful change, all thanks to the law of Anika. There is a beautiful story of a Zen master who had a favorite teacup. It was an exquisite piece, and he cherished it. He would drink his tea from it every day, and his students saw how much he valued it. One day, he held the cup and said to his students, "To me, this cup is already broken. I enjoy its beauty, the way it feels in my hands, the way it holds the warm tea, but I know that its nature is fragile, and one day it will inevitably break. So I enjoy it completely in this moment, while fully accepting its impermanent nature." Sometime later, a student accidentally knocked the cup from a shelf, and it shattered into 100 pieces. The students were horrified and afraid of the master's reaction, but the master simply looked at the pieces on the floor calmly and said, "Ah, yes, the time has come." There was no shock, no anger, no grief. His peace did not come from a lack of love for the cup. On the contrary, he loved it fully. His peace came from a deep, prior acceptance of its true nature. He had already let it go, long before it broke. This is the freedom that the wisdom of anicca offers us. It teaches us to love our friends and family more deeply, because we know our time together is precious and finite. It teaches us to savor the simple joys of life, a beautiful sunset, a shared meal, a moment of silence more fully, because we know they are fleeting gifts. It teaches us how to hold the things of this world with an open hand, rather than a clenched fist. We can enjoy them while they are here, and let them go gracefully when their time is up. Instead of fighting the current of reality, we learn to ride the wave. Life will present us with all kinds of waves. Waves of joy, waves of sorrow, waves of success, waves of failure. To resist them is to be tumbled and battered in the surf. But to practice with impermanence is to learn how to surf. We find our balance on the board of our mindfulness practice, and we learn to use the energy of the waves themselves. We ride the crest of the wave of joy with full appreciation, knowing it will subside. We navigate the trough of the wave of sorrow with courage and self-compassion, knowing it too will pass. We are no longer victims of the ocean. We become graceful dancers with its rhythm. Embracing impermanence is not a morbid resignation to loss. It is a radical and joyful acceptance of life, as it truly is, a dynamic, unpredictable, and miraculous flow. It is the key to releasing the past, inhabiting the present with our whole being, and meeting the future without fear. This profound insight, however, naturally gives rise to an even deeper question. If my body is constantly changing, if my feelings are fleeting, if my thoughts are like clouds in the sky, if everything I identify with is impermanent, then who am I? What is this I that is witnessing this endless flow? This question leads us to the very heart of the mystery of existence, and to the next great mark of reality, the truth of anatta, or not, self. We have walked the path of wisdom to a place of profound insight. We have seen that the world around us and within us is a ceaseless, flowing river of impermanence, of anicca. This clear seeing naturally brings us to the most intimate and challenging question of all. If everything is changing, what about the one who is experiencing all this change? Who is this I that feels joy, that thinks thoughts, that is reading these words right now? We instinctively feel that there is a solid, continuous self at the center of our being, an unchanging essence that is the me behind my eyes, the thinker of my thoughts, the feeler of my feelings. The Buddha's deepest and most revolutionary insight, the truth of anatta, or not self, invites us to question this fundamental assumption. This teaching can initially be terrifying. The idea of not self might sound like a denial of our existence, a cold, nihilistic pronouncement that we are nothing. But this is a complete misunderstanding. The teaching of anatta does not claim that you do not exist. It claims that you do not exist as a separate, solid, permanent entity. It suggests that what we call ourselves is not a noun, but a verb. It is a process, not a thing. It is a flowing, interconnected pattern of events, not an isolated, independent owner of those events. To understand this is to embark on the ultimate investigation, a journey into the very nature of who we are. To guide this investigation, the Buddha provided a brilliant analytical tool, the teaching of the 5 aggregates, or khandas in Pali. These are the 5 heaps, or collections of processes, that we mistake for a solid self. He invites us to look at our own experience and break it down into these 5 categories, and then to examine each one to see if we can find a permanent I within it. The first aggregate is form, or rupa. This is our physical body, and by extension, the entire material world perceived by our senses. We tend to identify strongly with our bodies. We say I am walking, or I am sick, but let us look closely. Is this body really me? It is composed of non-body elements, the food we ate, the water we drank, the air we breathe. It is in a constant state of flux, with cells dying and being born. It ages, it gets sick, it changes, all largely outside of our command. If this body were truly me, we should be able to command it. Do not get old, do not get sick, but we cannot. The body is more like a house we inhabit, or a vehicle we drive, for a short time. It is a precious process to be cared for, but it is not our essential self. The second aggregate is feeling, or vedana. This refers to the raw, immediate sensations that arise whenever our senses make contact with the world. These are categorized into 3 types: pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral. A cool breeze on a hot day is pleasant. A sharp pain is unpleasant. The feeling of your clothes against your skin might be neutral. We are driven by these feelings, chasing the pleasant and fleeing the unpleasant. But are these feelings me? They are completely dependent on external conditions. They are fleeting, arising and vanishing in a moment. If they were truly me, we could simply decide to feel pleasant all the time. But we cannot. Feelings are like weather patterns passing through the landscape of our awareness. They are visitors, not the owner of the house. The third aggregate is perception, or sanya. This is the mental function of recognizing and labeling. When light hits our eyes, that is sensation. When the mind labels it a blue car or a threatening gesture, that is perception. It is the faculty that sorts, categorizes, and makes sense of the raw data of our senses, based on our past experiences and conditioning. But is this process of labeling me? Our perceptions are often wrong. They are shaped by our biases and prejudices. 2 people can perceive the exact same event in completely different ways. Perception is a fallible mental tool, a kind of internal map maker. It is not the territory, and it is not the self who travels through it. The 4th aggregate is the most complex: mental formations, or sankhara. This category includes all of our other mental habits, our intentions, opinions, beliefs, moods, volitions, biases, and character traits. It is what we would typically call our personality. It is the anger that arises, the love we feel, the ambition that drives us, the fear that holds us back. But are these mental formations me? Look closely. Where did your opinions come from? They were learned from parents, teachers, and society. Are they permanent? They change over time. Are they always under your control? Often, a mood or a reactive thought pattern seems to have a life of its own. These are conditioned mental programs, habits of mind that have been reinforced over years. They are the software running on the hardware of the brain, but they are not the essential programmer. The 5th and final aggregate is consciousness, or vijnana. This is the raw faculty of awareness itself, the simple knowing of an experience. It is not a monolithic consciousness with a capital C, but a series of distinct moments of consciousness. Eye consciousness arises dependent on the eye and a visible form. Ear consciousness arises dependent on the ear and a sound. It is not a permanent soul or observer sitting behind our eyes, watching the show of life. It is more like a flickering light that illuminates an object for a split second. It arises and ceases with every moment of cognition, completely dependent on the other 4 aggregates. It cannot exist on its own. It too is a process, not a thing. A famous dialogue between the sage Nagasena and the Greek king Melinda perfectly illustrates this deconstruction of the self. The king arrived for the dialogue in a magnificent chariot. After the initial greetings, he challenged Nagasena on the idea of not self. Nagasena responded by asking the king about his chariot. "Your Majesty, is the chariot the wheels?" "Certainly not," replied the king. "Is it the axle then? Or the frame? Or the reins?" To each question, the king answered, "Number." Nagasena then asked, "Is the chariot something other than its parts?" "No," the king admitted. "Then, Your Majesty," Nagasena concluded, "where is this chariot?" Chariot is simply a convenient name, a conventional designation for the functional assembly of these parts. When the parts are taken away, there is no chariot. He then delivered the final point. In just the same way, Nagasena is a conventional name for the assembly of form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. But if you look for a permanent, unchanging Nagasena within or apart from these 5 aggregates, you will not find one. This insight is the key that unlocks the door of our deepest prison. All of our most painful emotions, pride, shame, jealousy, social anxiety, and especially the deep, abiding fear of death, are rooted in this illusion of a solid, separate self that needs to be protected and promoted. We spend our entire lives polishing, defending, and worrying about this imaginary statue of me. The teaching of Anatta reveals that there is no statue. It has been a phantom all along. This is not a cause for despair. It is the greatest liberation imaginable. Think of the immense energy you expend defending your opinions, worrying about what others think of you, feeling hurt when you are criticized. When you see that your opinions and the image others have of you are just shifting, impersonal processes, the need to defend them simply falls away. Think of the fear of death. We fear the annihilation of this precious I. But if we see that this I is not a thing to be destroyed, but a process that is already in a state of constant birth and death, the fear loses its grip. We see ourselves less as a solid noun and more as a flowing verb, interconnected with the entire stream of life. This is where the most beautiful fruit of anatta ripens. When the hard, artificial walls of self and other begin to dissolve, we naturally and spontaneously feel our profound connection with all beings. The illusion of separation is the root of all conflict and cruelty. The wisdom of non-separation is the root of all compassion. We realize that the suffering of another is not separate from our own. Their desire for happiness is the same as our own. The heart, freed from the cramped prison of the ego, expands to embrace the entire world. This is not a sentimental feeling. It is the logical and heartfelt consequence of seeing things as they truly are. When the separate self is seen through, what remains is love. And it is this open, boundless heart that we will now explore. When the solid walls of the self begin to dissolve under the gentle, persistent light of wisdom, a vast space opens up within us. We see through the illusion of our separateness. We realize that we are not isolated islands, but waves in a single, boundless ocean of existence. This profound insight is not a cold, intellectual abstraction. It is a deeply felt experience that changes everything. And the natural, spontaneous emotion that rushes in to fill the space once occupied by the ego is love. Not the conditional, grasping love of attachment, but a boundless, unconditional love for all of existence. The cultivation of this open heart is the focus of two of the most beautiful practices on the path: metta, or loving, kindness, and karuna, or compassion. These qualities are not just sentimental ideals, they are powerful, transformative states of mind that we can actively develop. They are the emotional fruits of wisdom, the warmth of a heart that has understood its profound interconnection with all that lives. Metta is the wish for all beings to be happy. It is a boundless, benevolent friendliness, a warmth that radiates outward from the heart without discrimination. It is like the sun, which shines its light on everyone and everything, the beautiful and the plain, the friend and the stranger, the virtuous and the flawed. It does not ask for anything in return. It is not dependent on whether someone is nice to us or whether we approve of them. Metta is the radical wish for the well-being of another, simply because they exist and, like us, want to be happy. It is the perfect antidote to the poison of anger, ill will, and resentment, which contract the heart and bind us in suffering. Karuna, or compassion, is its inseparable companion. While metta is the wish for all to be happy, karuna is the heart's response to seeing suffering. It is the trembling of the heart in the face of pain, and the active wish, may you be free from this suffering. It is crucial to understand that compassion is not pity. Pity looks down from a place of superiority, creating distance. It says, "You poor thing, I am glad I am not you." Compassion is a connection between equals. It says, "I am with you in this. I recognize this pain, for I too am vulnerable." It arises from the deep understanding of anatta and dukkha, recognition that all beings, without exception, are subject to suffering and wish to be free from it. Compassion dissolves the illusion of us and them and replaces it with a profound sense of shared humanity. It is the perfect antidote to the poison of cruelty and indifference. These heart qualities are not something we either have or don't have. They are like muscles that can be strengthened with practice. The primary method for this is the practice of metta meditation. It is a simple yet profound technique for opening the heart in gradually expanding circles. The practice always begins in the one place we so often neglect, with ourselves. We cannot offer water to others from an empty well. We must first extend loving kindness to our own being. You can sit quietly and gently repeat in your mind phrases such as, "May I be happy, may I be healthy, may I be safe, may I live with ease." At first, this may feel awkward, even selfish, but it is the most essential step. We must learn to treat ourselves with the same kindness we would offer a dear friend. Once a feeling of warmth and friendliness begins to awaken in our own heart, we expand the circle. We bring to mind a benefactor or a dearly loved one, a person for whom it is easy to feel love and gratitude. We hold their image in our mind and extend the same wishes to them. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be safe. May you live with ease. We let the feeling of metta flow freely from our heart to theirs. Next, we expand the circle to include a neutral person. This might be someone we see regularly, but have no strong feelings about, a cashier at the grocery store, a neighbor we barely know. We extend the very same wishes to this person. This stage challenges our habitual indifference and helps us to see the humanity in everyone we encounter, not just those within our inner circle. The most transformative stage comes next. We bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom we have conflict, or for whom we feel resentment. This is challenging, but we attempt to offer them the same wishes. May you be happy. May you be free from suffering. This is not an endorsement of their harmful actions. It is not about forcing ourselves to like them. It is a practice for our own liberation. We recognize that holding on to anger and hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It only harms ourselves. By offering them metta, we release the poison from our own heart. We wish for them to be happy, because a truly happy person does not cause harm to others. Finally, we expand the circle to its ultimate conclusion. We radiate the energy of loving kindness in all directions, front, back, left, right, up and down, to all beings everywhere, to friends, to strangers, to enemies, to humans and to animals, to beings in all realms of existence. May all beings be happy. May all beings be well. May all beings be safe. May all beings be free. The heart, which was once a small, guarded enclosure, becomes as vast and boundless as space itself. The power of these qualities in action is beautifully illustrated in a story from the life of the Buddha. There was a monk named Putigata whose body was afflicted with terrible oozing sores. The condition was so foul and the smell so unbearable that his fellow monks, overcome with disgust, had abandoned him. He lay alone in his own filth, his robes stuck to his skin, dying in misery. The Buddha, in his daily survey of the world, became aware of the monk's plight. He went to the shed where Tissa lay. Without a word of judgment, the Buddha began to boil water. With his own hands, he gently washed the suffering monk's body, cleaning his sores and anointing them with medicine. He washed the monk's soiled robes and dressed him in a fresh one. He comforted him, and then, seeing that the monk's mind was now calm and receptive, he taught him the Dharma. It is said that the monk, cared for and at peace, realized enlightenment right there as he lay dying. Later, the other monks gathered, and the Buddha addressed them. He said, "Monks, you have no mother and no father to care for you. If you do not care for one another, who else will? Whoever would tend to the sick and the suffering is tending to me." In this single act, the Buddha demonstrated the true meaning of compassion. It is not an abstract ideal, it is love in action. It is born from the wisdom that sees no fundamental separation between me and you, between the enlightened one and the sickest monk. There is only being, and there is suffering that needs to be met with love. This is the path of the heart. It is the practice of looking at ourselves and at the world through the eyes of unconditional love. It is the understanding that self-compassion is the foundation for all other compassion. We must learn to hold our own pain, our own imperfections, our own dukkha with the same gentle, non-judgmental tenderness that the Buddha showed to the sick monk. When our own heart is no longer at war with itself, it becomes a boundless source of peace and healing for the world. But for this boundless heart to be stable, for it not to be just a fleeting mood swayed by circumstances, it must be grounded in a mind that is calm, clear, and collected. This love needs the support of a well-trained awareness. And so, our journey now turns to the practical techniques that cultivate this mental stability, beginning with the most fundamental and accessible anchor we possess, our own breath. Having opened the heart to the boundless warmth of loving kindness and compassion, we now turn to the essential training that gives these qualities a stable home. A kind heart, without a calm and focused mind, can be easily overwhelmed by the storms of life. Wisdom and compassion need the support of a mind that is collected, clear, and present. This is the practice of samadhi, or mental discipline, and its cornerstone, the very foundation of all meditative training, is the practice of mindfulness. And the gateway to mindfulness, the simple, profound, and always accessible tool we use to train our wild minds, is our own breath. The practice is called anapanasati, which simply means mindfulness of breathing. We spend almost our entire lives adrift in time. Our minds are either tangled in the past replaying old conversations, nursing old grievances, clinging to faded glorious. They are lunging into the future, rehearsing for conversations that may never happen, worrying about potential disasters, and fantasizing about future triumphs. All of our anxiety, our regret, our neurotic planning, and our sorrow takes place in these two realms, the realm of memory and the realm of imagination. Yet, neither of them is real. The past is gone forever. The future is an unborn phantom. The only time we are ever truly alive, the only place we have any power to choose or to act, is right now, in this present moment, but we are rarely here to experience it. We are like ghosts, haunting the ruins of our past and the blueprints of our future. The practice of mindfulness of breathing is a loving, gentle, and radical act of homecoming. It is the practice of returning, again and again, to the only moment that truly exists. The breath is chosen as our primary anchor for several beautiful reasons. It is always with us, from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death. It is free. It requires no special equipment or belief system, and it has a unique quality of being both automatic and controllable, bridging our conscious and unconscious worlds. Most importantly, the breath is always happening now. You cannot breathe in the past. You cannot breathe in the future. To be aware of your breath is to be aware of the present moment. It is our portable, ever-present anchor in the sea of time. The instructions for this practice are deceptively simple. You find a posture that is both comfortable and dignified, either sitting on a cushion on the floor or upright in a chair. You allow your back to be straight, but not tense, embodying a sense of alertness and ease. You can gently close your eyes, or leave them slightly open with a soft, unfocused gaze. Then, you simply bring your attention to the physical sensations of your breath. You might choose to rest your awareness at the tip of your nostrils, noticing the cool sensation of the air as it enters, and the slightly warmer sensation as it leaves. Or you might rest your attention on your abdomen, feeling its gentle rise and fall with each cycle of breath. The location does not matter. The instruction is simply to feel the raw sensations, without judgment and without trying to control the breath in any way. Let it be long or short, deep or shallow, as it naturally is. Your only job is to be the curious, gentle witness to this simple, life-giving process. Now, here is the most important instruction of all. Within a few moments, or perhaps even a few seconds, you will notice that your mind has wandered away. You will find yourself lost in a thought, a memory, a plan, a fantasy. This is not a mistake. This is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. This is simply what minds do. The nature of the untrained mind is to wander. The practice does not lie in achieving a perfectly empty, thought-free mind. The practice, the moment of awakening, happens in the instant you realize you have been lost. That moment of recognition, I've been thinking, is a moment of mindfulness. And what do you do in that moment? You do not scold yourself. You do not get frustrated or sigh with disappointment. To do so would be to feed the wolf of self-criticism. Instead, you offer yourself a moment of silent congratulations for having woken up. And then, with the gentleness you might use to guide a lost child or a small puppy back home, you softly, kindly escort your attention back to the sensations of the breath. That is all. You breathe in, you breathe out. You get lost in thought. You wake up. You gently return. This is the entire practice. That moment of return is the essential movement of meditation. It is like a bicep curl for the brain. Each time you gently bring your wandering mind back to the anchor of the breath, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. There is a powerful ancient simile for this process, the taming of a wild elephant. The untrained mind is like a wild elephant, full of immense power and energy, but chaotic and destructive. It crashes through the jungle of our daily lives, driven by the primal urges of fear and desire, leaving a trail of wreckage. To train this elephant, a wise tamer does not fight it head-on. That would be futile. Instead, The tamer finds a strong, sturdy post, firmly planted in the ground. This post represents the present moment. Then, the tamer takes a strong rope. This rope is the breath and ties the wild elephant to the post. At first, the elephant is furious. It pulls and thrashes, trumpeting with rage, desperately trying to break the rope and run back into the familiar jungle of distraction and habit. This is what the mind feels like in the early days of meditation. Practice restless, agitated, and rebellious. The tamer's job is not to beat the elephant into submission. It is simply to be patient and to make sure the rope holds fast. Gradually, over time, the elephant realizes that its struggle is useless. It grows tired of pulling. It begins to calm down. It sees that the post is not a threat, and eventually it lies down peacefully at the foot of the post, content and at ease. In the same way, the mind, when repeatedly and gently brought back to the breath, eventually ceases its struggle. It grows calm. It discovers that the present moment is not a prison, but a place of refuge and safety. Finally, when the elephant is completely tame, it will trust the tamer so implicitly that the rope can be removed. Its immense strength and energy are no longer destructive, but can now be guided by the tamer's wisdom to perform helpful and productive work. This is the liberated mind, powerful, focused, and directed by compassion and wisdom, capable of penetrating the deepest truths of existence. This simple practice of returning to the breath has profound effects. It calms the nervous system, shifting us out of our chronic, low-grade fight-or-flight mode and into a state of rest and balance. More importantly, it creates a space in our minds. It forges a gap between stimulus and response. An insult is spoken. Before, the reaction of anger was instantaneous and automatic. But with practice, a small space opens up. In that space, we are free. We have a choice. We can see the anger arising, but we don't have to be hijacked by it. We can choose, instead, to respond with patience, with wisdom, with silence. This space is freedom. It is the difference between being a puppet of our conditioning and being the conscious author of our lives. This is the raft that can carry us across the turbulent river of our own mind. It is a homecoming, and now, having established this safe harbor in the breath, we can begin to allow the light of our awareness to expand, to gently illuminate our entire physical presence in the world. Having anchored our awareness in the gentle, rhythmic tide of the breath, we have found a place of refuge in the present moment. We have learned how to gently guide the mind home, from its ceaseless travels into past and future. Now, we are invited to expand this field of mindfulness, to allow the soft light of our attention to move from the anchor of the breath and illuminate the vessel that carries us through this life, our own body. This is the practice of kayanupassana, or mindfulness of the body. For most of us, this is a revolutionary act. In our modern world, we have become profoundly disembodied. We live in our heads, in a world of concepts, plans, and screens. We treat our bodies as tools, as vehicles to transport our brains from one task to the next, or as ornaments to be judged, criticized, and forced into conformity with an ideal. We are often deaf to our body's wisdom, ignoring its signals until they become screams of pain or illness. The practice of mindfulness of the body is a gentle and loving homecoming. It is the journey from using a body to truly inhabiting one. The body is a magnificent object for meditation. Like the breath, it is always here, always in the present moment. You cannot feel a sensation that happened yesterday. You can only feel what is happening right now. It is a direct doorway out of the labyrinth of abstract thought and into the tangible, felt reality of existence. It is also the library of our life story. Our joys, our fears, and our unprocessed traumas are all held as patterns of tension and sensation within our physical form. To bring a gentle, non-judgmental awareness to these places is to begin a deep process of healing and release. And perhaps most profoundly, the body is a vast and ever-changing landscape where we can witness the universal truths of impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self directly for ourselves. The primary method for cultivating this awareness is a practice known as the body scan. It is a systematic journey of attention through the entire physical form. To begin, you might lie down on your back, if that is comfortable, or sit in a chair. You take a few moments to arrive, feeling the weight of your body, the points of contact with the floor or the chair, and connecting with the gentle rhythm of your breath. Then, you gather your attention, as if it were a soft beam of light, and you bring it all the way down to your feet. You might begin with the toes of your left foot. The invitation is not to think about your toes, but to feel them from the inside. What sensations are actually present? Is there warmth, coolness, a tingling, a sense of pulsing, or perhaps numbness? You may feel a lot, or you may feel very little. There is no right or wrong way to feel. The practice is simply to meet whatever is there with a kind and curious attention. From the toes, you slowly allow your awareness to expand, to include the sole of the foot, the heel, the top of the foot. You are simply receiving the raw data of sensation without needing to label it or judge it. Then you move your attention to the ankle, the lower leg, the knee. At each point, you pause, you feel, you receive. You continue this journey up the left leg, into the thigh, and then you repeat the entire process with the right leg, starting from the toes and moving slowly upward. You are not in a hurry. You are on a journey of discovery into a land you have owned your whole life, but have rarely explored. You then bring your awareness into the pelvic region, the hips, the lower back, the abdomen. You notice the subtle movements of the abdomen with the breath. You sweep your attention up your back, across your shoulder blades, and up into the chest, feeling the subtle sensations of the heartbeat and the lungs expanding and contracting. You explore your hands, finger by finger, before moving up the arms, into the shoulders and the neck. You bring a particularly gentle awareness to the shoulders and neck, areas where so many of us hold chronic tension. Finally, you sweep your attention through your face, your jaw, your mouth, your cheeks, your eyes, your forehead, and all the way to the very top of your head. What happens when you encounter a place of discomfort, an area of pain or intense tension? Our habitual reaction is to either recoil from the pain or to tense up around it, fighting it. Mindfulness invites a radically different approach. Instead of turning away, you gently turn toward the sensation. You bring your soft, curious awareness right to the heart of the discomfort. You might notice its precise location, its shape, its qualities. Is it a sharp pain, a dull ache, a burning sensation? You can try breathing into the sensation, as if your breath could carry a quality of kindness and spaciousness to that tight place. You watch it, not with the intention of making it go away, but with the simple intention of understanding it. And in this gentle, sustained watching, you may notice that the sensation, like all other things, is not solid. It changes, it intensifies, it softens, it shifts. It is a process, not a permanent entity. After journeying through the individual parts, you can allow your awareness to hold the entire body as a single, unified field of sensation. You feel the whole landscape of your physical form, from the tips of your toes to the top of your head, as a vibrant, tingling, breathing totality. You are no longer a mind thinking about a body. You are an embodied awareness. There is a story of a master carpenter who is given a rare and beautiful piece of wood. Before he even thinks of picking up a saw or a chisel, he spends a long time simply being with the wood. He turns it over in his hands, feeling its weight and balance. He runs his fingers along the grain, noticing its texture and its direction. He looks for knots, for cracks, for any imperfections. He doesn't judge the wood for having a knot. He understands that the knot is part of the wood's history and character. By taking the time to understand the wood so intimately, he knows exactly how to work with it skillfully, how to honor its strengths and navigate its weaknesses, to create something beautiful. For most of our lives, we have been unskilled carpenters of our own bodies. We have ignored their grain, fought against their knots, and tried to force them into shapes they were not meant to take. The practice of mindfulness of the body is the process of becoming a master carpenter of our own being. We learn to listen to our body, to understand its unique language of sensation, to know its areas of tension and its areas of ease. This intimate knowledge allows us to live in our bodies with far more wisdom, kindness, and skill. This practice grounds us. When you are caught in a storm of anxious thoughts, feeling the physical sensation of your feet planted firmly on the earth can be an incredibly powerful anchor, pulling you out of the dizzying world of abstract worry and into the solid reality of the present. It helps us to reclaim our bodies from the realm of judgment and objectification and to rediscover them as a source of wisdom and aliveness. We begin to notice the early signals of our emotions. That tightness in the jaw is the beginning of anger. That hollow feeling in the stomach is the first whisper of fear. By catching these signals early, we can respond to them with wisdom rather than reacting blindly once they have become a raging storm. We are no longer strangers in our own homes. We have returned. And now, grounded in the felt sense of our physical being, we are prepared to bring this same gentle, non-judgmental awareness to the even more subtle and turbulent energies that flow through it, the ever-changing currents of our feelings and emotions. Having come home to the tangible reality of our physical body, we have found a place of grounding, an anchor in the storm of our restless minds. We have learned to inhabit our skin, to listen to the subtle language of sensation. Now, with this embodied presence as our foundation, we are ready to turn our gentle, non-judgmental awareness to the inner weather of our lives, the ever-changing, often turbulent world of our feelings and emotions. This is the practice of Vedananupasana, mindfulness of feelings. This is where we learn to be the calm, spacious sky, rather than the fleeting cloud. Our inner world is a constant flow of feeling tones. In the Buddhist understanding, Vedana, or feeling, is the immediate, visceral response that precedes our more complex emotions and stories. Every single moment of our experience, every sight, sound, taste, touch, and thought has a subtle feeling tone attached to it. It is either pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. A sip of warm tea on a cold morning is pleasant. The sound of a car alarm outside your window is unpleasant. The feeling of your back against the chair might be neutral. The entire drama of our lives, the endless cycle of craving and aversion that fuels our dukkha, is built upon our unconscious, automatic reactions to these three simple feeling tones. When a pleasant feeling arises, our habit is to grasp it, to cling to it, to say more. This is the root of craving. When an unpleasant feeling arises, our habit is to resist it, to push it away, to say no. This is the root of aversion. And when a neutral feeling arises, our habit is to ignore it, to zone out, to fall into a state of dullness. Mindfulness of feelings is the practice of interrupting this lifelong automatic reactivity. It is the practice of learning to meet our feelings with awareness before they spiral into full-blown emotional dramas. It is a profound training in emotional intelligence and resilience. The practice is not to stop feeling, nor is it to feel only pleasant things. The goal is to learn how to be with the full spectrum of our human experience, with wisdom and an open heart. The practice begins with recognition. Drawing upon the stability we have cultivated, we simply notice when a strong feeling or emotion arises. We feel a knot of tightness in our stomach, and we recognize, this is fear. We feel a flush of heat in our face, and we recognize, this is anger. We feel a wave of lethargy, and we recognize, this is sadness. This first step alone is revolutionary. Instead of being completely consumed by the emotion, we have taken a step back. We have become the observer of the emotion. The second step is to allow the feeling to be there. We drop our inner resistance. For a moment, we give the feeling permission to exist. This can feel counterintuitive, especially with painful emotions. Our instinct is to fight them or suppress them. But this resistance is like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It takes immense effort, and eventually, the ball will pop up with even greater force. Allowing a feeling to be there doesn't mean we like it or want it to stay forever. It is simply a truce. We lay down our weapons and agree to meet the experience on its own terms. The third step is to investigate the feeling with a gentle, friendly curiosity. Instead of getting lost in the story about the anger, he shouldn't have said that. It's so unfair. I'm going to tell him. We turn our attention to the raw, physical sensations of the anger itself. Where do you feel anger in your body? Is it a tightness in the jaw? A pounding in the chest? A heat in the face? What are its actual, physical qualities? We explore it not as a solid thing called anger, but as a shifting, changing pattern of energy and sensation. When we do this, we make a remarkable discovery. The emotion is not solid. It is a process, a wave that rises, crests, and eventually passes away. A powerful technique to aid in this process is the simple act of mental noting or naming. When you feel anger, You can silently say to yourself, anger, anger, or feeling angry. This is not an intellectual analysis. It is a simple, soft label that acts like a magic key. It creates a space between you and the emotion. You are no longer lost in anger. You are the one who is aware of anger. The emotion is transformed from a subject that has hijacked you into an object that you can observe with clarity. This leads to the final, liberating insight: non-identification. This anger is not me. It is not mine. It is simply anger. It is an impersonal, conditioned phenomenon that has arisen due to causes and conditions, and it will pass away when those conditions change. We are the sky, vast and open. Our feelings, our joy, our sadness, our anger, our fear are like clouds passing through. Sometimes the sky is full of dark, stormy clouds. Sometimes it is clear and blue. But the sky is never damaged by the clouds. It never becomes the clouds. By learning to identify with the sky rather than the weather, we find an unshakable peace that is not dependent on our emotional state. A classic Zen story illustrates this principle with brilliant clarity. A fierce, high-ranking samurai named Nobushige once stormed up to the humble hut of the great Zen master Hakuin. "Master," he barked, "tell me about heaven and hell." Hakuin looked the warrior up and down with an expression of utter disdain. "Teach you?" he scoffed. "Look at you. You're just a brutish, oafish samurai. Your sword is probably rusty. I wouldn't waste my breath on a fool like you." The samurai's pride was deeply wounded. He became enraged. His face turned purple. He drew his massive sword, and he raised it high, ready to cut the master down. In that split second, as the samurai was completely consumed by his own blind fury, Hakuin calmly pointed his finger at the warrior's face and said, "That is the gate of hell." The samurai froze. The truth of the master's words hit him like a lightning bolt. He instantly understood that hell was not a place, but the state of his own mind, consumed by hatred. His rage vanished, replaced by a wave of awe and gratitude. He immediately sheathed his sword and bowed low to the ground in a gesture of deep respect. Hakuin smiled gently. "And this," he said softly, "is the gate of heaven." This story teaches us that we create our own heaven and hell from moment to moment. We open the gate to hell every time we are unconsciously swept away by our reactive emotions. We open the gate to heaven every time we can meet our experience with awareness, clarity, and presence. Mindfulness of feelings is the practice of learning to recognize which gate we are standing before and consciously choosing to walk through the gate of heaven. It is about understanding that we can feel the full force of an emotion without being its prisoner. We can feel intense anger without speaking a cruel word. We can feel profound grief without collapsing into utter despair. The practice gives us our freedom back. Our emotions are not our enemies. They are messengers, often carrying vital information about our needs and our relationship with the world. By learning to sit with them, to listen to their wisdom without being overthrown by their power, we become more whole, more integrated, and more deeply human. We learn to navigate the rich, and sometimes treacherous, landscape of our own heart with courage and grace. And as we become more familiar with these emotional currents, we may begin to notice what so often triggers them: the subtle, lightning, fast flicker of thought that precedes the feeling. To gain even deeper freedom, it is to this realm, the very stream of consciousness itself, that we must now turn our gentle and curious gaze. Having learned to ground ourselves in the body and navigate the inner weather of our feelings, we now arrive at the very source of much of that weather, the mind itself. We turn our awareness toward the ceaseless, chattering stream of consciousness that provides the constant soundtrack to our lives. This is the practice of Cittanupassana, or mindfulness of mind, and it is here that we confront the famous and often frustrating monkey mind. The Buddha used this brilliant simile to describe the nature of the untrained mind. It is like a restless monkey swinging wildly from branch to branch in the jungle of our psyche. One moment it is swinging to a branch in the past, replaying a conversation from 10 years ago. The next, it leaps to a branch in the future, anxiously rehearsing for a meeting next week. It grabs a fruit of desire, then screeches in fear at a shadow of anxiety, then chatters endlessly with judgments about itself and others. It never stays still. It is chaotic, reactive, and exhausting. For most of our lives, we believe that we are this monkey. We are completely identified with its frantic movements and its noisy chatter. Mindfulness of mind is the radical practice of realizing that we are not the monkey. We are the calm, spacious jungle that holds the monkey. The first and most liberating insight that arises from this practice is the realization that thoughts are not facts. This is perhaps one of the most important things you can ever learn. We live in a trance, a waking dream, where we assume that the voice in our head is speaking the absolute truth. If the mind produces the thought, "I am not good enough," we treat it as a verified fact. If it produces the thought, "This situation is a disaster," we believe it without question. We are tyrannized by our own inner narrator. Mindfulness of mind allows us to see thoughts for what they are. They are simply mental events. They are bits of language, images, and sounds bubbling up in the space of awareness. They are suggestions, echoes of the past, habits of the mind. They are not reality itself. You do not have to believe everything you think, any more than you have to believe every spam email that lands in your inbox. The practice, then, is not to stop the monkey from swinging. You cannot force the mind to be silent. Trying to suppress thoughts is like trying to flatten the waves of the ocean with an iron. It only creates more turbulence. The practice is far more gentle and profound. It is simply to take a step back and watch the show. We find a comfortable posture, connect with our breath as an anchor, and then we allow the mind to do what it does, but we watch it from a place of detached, friendly curiosity. We become the audience in the theater of our own mind. A thought arises. Perhaps it's a planning thought. "I need to remember to buy milk after work." Instead of getting swept away by this and then planning the rest of the shopping trip, we simply note it. Planning, and we let it go. A moment later, a memory might arise, a warm, pleasant memory of a past holiday. We note, remembering. We enjoy the pleasant feeling for a moment, and we let it go, without clinging. Then a harsh, critical thought might appear. "I'm terrible at this meditation." Instead of believing it and getting discouraged, we note, judging. We see it not as a fact, but as a classic habit of the mind. By labeling the thought, we are no longer entangled in its content. We are resting in the awareness of the thinking process itself. As we continue this practice, we begin to notice our own personal brand of mental chatter. We see the patterns, the favorite branches that our monkey mind loves to swing on. We might notice a strong tendency toward catastrophic thinking, where every small problem is amplified into a disaster. We might see a relentless inner critic that is never satisfied. We might discover that we spend a huge amount of time replaying old hurts or worrying about things that are completely outside of our control. Seeing these patterns is not a cause for despair. It is deeply empowering. It is like turning on the lights in a dark room. For the first time, we can see the layout of the furniture we've been tripping over our whole lives. Once we see the patterns, we are no longer their helpless victims. A beautiful and helpful way to visualize this practice is to imagine yourself sitting peacefully on the bank of a gently flowing river. The river is your mind, the stream of consciousness. The leaves, twigs, and flowers floating by on the surface of the water are your individual thoughts. For most of your life, you have been in the river. When a beautiful flower of a happy thought floated by, you jumped in and tried to grab it, only to have it dissolve in your hands. When a jagged branch of a painful thought came along, you thrashed and struggled against it, exhausting yourself. The practice of mindfulness of mind is the decision to swim to the shore. You sit comfortably on the soft grass. You are safe, you are grounded, you are at peace. And from this stable vantage point, you simply watch the river flow. You see a green leaf of a hopeful thought appear upstream. You watch it float past you, and you watch it disappear downstream. You don't need to do anything about it. Then you see a dark, muddy clump of a resentful thought. You observe it with the same impartial interest. You notice its texture and its weight, and you watch as it too is carried away by the current. You are not the river, you are not the leaves. You are the silent, spacious, unwavering awareness that witnesses it all. When we are identified with our thoughts, we live in a prison of our own making. We are locked in a virtual reality, suffering from events that are not even happening. We are tormented by the ghosts of yesterday and the phantoms of tomorrow. But when we learn to rest in awareness, we are freed from this prison. This does not mean we become mindless. On the contrary, we gain true mastery over the mind. We can now use thought as the magnificent tool that it is. When we need to plan, we can pick up the tool of planning, use it with clarity, and then put it down. When we need to solve a problem, we can engage the analytical mind and then let it rest. We are no longer a slave to a tool that we cannot put down. This practice is the ultimate act of mental hygiene. It is about making peace with our minds, not waging war on them. It is the discovery that beneath the endless noise of our inner chatter, there is a profound silence. Beneath the turbulent waves of thought, there is a deep ocean of stillness. This stillness, this silent, spacious awareness, is our true nature. It has been there all along, patiently waiting for us to notice it. With this realization, the core training in mindfulness is complete. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the breath, to inhabit the body, to navigate the heart's emotions, and to witness the mind's activity. The ground of awareness is now firm beneath our feet. The next question becomes, how do we walk on this ground? How do we take this inner clarity and compassion and express it in our interactions with the world? Our journey now moves from the inner cultivation of mindfulness to its outer expression, beginning with the profound and creative power of our words. Having cultivated a deep, inner stillness through the practice of mindfulness, we now turn our attention to how this inner peace and clarity manifests in the world. The journey moves from the silent internal landscape of the mind to the dynamic, interactive realm of our daily life. The first and most powerful bridge between our inner state and our outer world is our speech. Every word we utter is a creation, an act that sends ripples out into the universe. The practice of samavacha, or right speech, is the art of ensuring that these ripples are waves of healing, connection, and peace, rather than waves of harm, division, and suffering. We often underestimate the power of our words. We speak thousands of them each day, most of them automatically, without conscious thought. Yet, words can build kingdoms, and they can start wars. They can mend a broken heart, or inflict a wound that never fully heals. A word of encouragement can change the course of a person's life. A word of contempt can shatter their confidence. The practice of right speech is the recognition of this immense power and the conscious commitment to wield it with the skill and precision of an artist and the compassion of a healer. It is the first step in the training of sila, or ethical conduct, because our speech is the most frequent and immediate way we impact the lives of others. The path of right speech is not about following a rigid set of rules, but about cultivating 4 beautiful and wholesome habits of communication, while gently abandoning their opposites. The first of these is to abstain from false speech. This means more than simply not telling big, malicious lies. It is a commitment to radical truthfulness in all its forms. It is abandoning exaggeration to make our stories more interesting. It is letting go of subtle omissions that paint a misleading picture. It is a commitment to keeping our promises so that our word becomes a source of reliability and trust. When we speak untruths, we create a complex, stressful inner world of fictions that we must constantly maintain. The mind of a liar is never at peace. To commit to truthful speech is to align our inner world with outer reality, creating a mind that is simple, clear, and free from the burden of deception. The second training is to abstain from divisive speech. This is speech that is designed to create enmity and discord, to set one person against another. It is the poison of slander, backbiting, and spreading gossip. We might engage in this to feel a sense of superiority, to bond with one person at the expense of another, or simply out of a mindless habit. But this way of speaking always creates walls. It fosters suspicion and destroys harmony. The cultivation of its opposite is speech that unites. It is the practice of looking for the good in others and speaking of it. It is using our words to build bridges of understanding, to encourage reconciliation, and to foster a sense of community. When you hear a negative rumor about someone, instead of passing it on, you allow it to stop with you. When you see conflict, you use words that soothe and connect, rather than inflame. This is the practice of being an agent of peace in a divided world. The third guideline is to abstain from harsh speech. These are words used as weapons. They are the words of anger, contempt, and cruelty. Yelling, insulting, belittling, using sarcasm to wound. All these are forms of violence. They may provide a momentary, bitter satisfaction, but they always leave a residue of pain, both in the one who is attacked and in the one who attacks. The antidote is the cultivation of gentle speech. This does not mean we can never speak of difficult things. It means we learn to speak the truth in a way that is kind, considerate, and helpful. It is speech that is, as the Buddha said, pleasing to the ear and soothing to the heart. Before offering criticism, we can check our own intention. Are we trying to help, or are we trying to hurt? We can choose words that are precise and constructive, rather than accusatory and shaming. We learn to speak to others with the same gentleness and respect we would wish for ourselves. The fourth and final training is to abstain from idle chatter. This is the mindless, purposeless talk that fills so much of our days. It is empty gossip, pointless speculation, and conversation that serves only to kill time and scatter our mental energy. It keeps the mind skimming along the surface of life, preventing it from ever settling into a state of deep peace or concentration. The cultivation of its opposite is speech that is meaningful and purposeful. It is speaking of things that are helpful, that are inspiring, that lead to wisdom and understanding. But even more profound than meaningful speech is the cultivation of its foundation, noble silence. This is not the awkward, tense silence of unspoken anger. Noble silence is a conscious, peaceful, and spacious choice. It is the wisdom of knowing that not every thought needs to be voiced, that not every moment needs to be filled with noise. It is the practice of listening deeply, both to others and to the silence itself. Often, the most profound communication, the most compassionate support we can offer another person is simply our silent, attentive, loving presence. There is a powerful old story that illustrates the irreversible nature of our words. A man in a village felt terrible guilt after spreading a malicious rumor about the town's wise and gentle sage. He went to the sage, confessed his wrongdoing, and asked what he could do to make amends. The sage listened patiently, and then gave the man a peculiar task. "Take a feather pillow," he said, "and go to the center of the village square. Cut it open, and shake all the feathers out into the wind." The man, though confused, did as he was told. He watched as the wind caught the thousands of tiny feathers and scattered them in every direction, over rooftops and into distant fields. He then returned to the sage and said, "I have done as you asked." The sage nodded. "Good. Now, for the second part of your penance, go and collect every single feather and bring it back to me." The man was horrified. "But master," he cried, "that is impossible. The wind has carried them everywhere. I can never get them all back." The sage looked at him with kind eyes. "Exactly," he said softly. "So it is with your words. Once they are spoken, they are like feathers in the wind. You can never get them all back. They travel to places you will never know and cause harm you can never fully repair." This story reminds us of the profound responsibility that comes with the gift of speech. To help us carry this responsibility with grace, we can use a simple set of questions as a filter before we speak. We can pause and ask ourselves, first, is it true? Second, is it kind, or spoken with a kind intention? Third, is it beneficial or necessary? And fourth, is this the right time and place? If what we are about to say does not pass through these four gates, then perhaps it is a feather best kept inside the pillow. Right speech is not about becoming timid, inauthentic, or boring. It is about becoming a master of a powerful and creative force. It is the art of aligning our words with our deepest wisdom and our most compassionate intentions. It is about transforming our voice from an unconscious weapon into a conscious instrument of healing, connection, and peace. But even the most beautiful words are hollow if they are not supported by our deeds. For our practice to be truly whole and integrated, our physical presence in the world must be as harmless and beneficial as our words. And this leads us to the next beautiful step on the path of ethical living, the practice of right action. Having explored the immense power of our words, we now turn to the physical embodiment of our intentions, our actions. While words create our social reality, our actions carve our legacy into the world itself. Every deed, from the smallest gesture to the most significant life choice, leaves a footprint in the sand of time. The practice of sammakammanta, or right action, is the art of ensuring that the footprints we leave behind trace a path of kindness, integrity, and peace, both for ourselves and for all those whose lives we touch. It is the second pillar of sila, or ethical conduct. And it is where our inner practice of mindfulness and compassion becomes a tangible, living reality. At the heart of right action is a set of guidelines for skillful living known as the 5 precepts. For many, the word precept or commandment can evoke a sense of rigid, external rules imposed by an authority figure. But in the Buddhist tradition, these are understood very differently. They are not commandments from a god. They are voluntary training principles that we undertake for our own liberation. They are like the protective walls around a beautiful garden. They are not there to imprison the flowers, but to protect them from being trampled, allowing them to grow to their full, beautiful potential. These 5 trainings are practical ways to protect our own peace of mind and to contribute to the safety and well-being of the world. Each is framed not just as an abstinence from a harmful act, but as an active cultivation of its beautiful, wholesome opposite. The first precept is the commitment to abstain from taking life. This is the foundation of a harmless life, the principle of ahimsa, or non-violence. On the surface, it means not killing other human beings, but its spirit extends to all living creatures. It is an invitation to cultivate a heart that recognizes and reveres the preciousness of life in all its forms. The positive quality we cultivate here is a profound respect and tenderness for all beings. We learn to see the world not as a collection of resources to be exploited, but as a community of fellow travelers, each with the same desire to live and to flourish. This training softens the heart and makes us a source of safety in the world. The second precept is to abstain from taking what is not given. This is the training in overcoming our greed and respecting the property of others. It means more than just refraining from theft. It includes all forms of dishonesty, such as taking advantage of a business error in our favor, using company resources for personal projects, or violating intellectual property. It is about being scrupulously honest in all our dealings. But its more beautiful, positive side is the active cultivation of dana, or generosity. Instead of a mind focused on, what can I get? We cultivate a mind that asks, what can I give? We practice generosity with our material possessions, but also with our time, our energy, our kind words, and our patient attention. We discover the joy of sufficiency, the inner wealth that comes from a non-possessive heart. The third precept is to abstain from sexual misconduct. This is a training in using our powerful sexual energy skillfully and compassionately. Misconduct is understood as any sexual act that causes harm to ourselves or to others. This includes any form of exploitation, coercion, or actions that betray the trust and commitments within a relationship. The positive cultivation here is a deep respect for our own bodies and the bodies of others. It is about fostering faithfulness, intimacy, and trust. It is recognizing that our sexuality is a potent force and choosing to channel it with kindness, mindfulness, and a deep sense of responsibility for the well-being of everyone involved. The fourth precept, as we have explored, is to abstain from false speech. Its inclusion in this core set of 5 highlights the profound connection between our words and our actions. Our speech is an action, and its consequences are just as real as any physical deed. The fifth and final precept is to abstain from intoxicants that lead to heedlessness. This refers to alcohol and recreational drugs that cloud the mind and impair our judgment. The key to understanding this precept is the phrase that lead to heedlessness. It is not a puritanical prohibition, but a very practical guideline. The reason for this training is simple. A clouded, intoxicated mind is the fertile ground in which all the other precepts are broken. Under the influence of intoxicants, our mindfulness is weakened, our compassion is diminished, and our wholesome intentions are forgotten. We may say or do things that we would never consider with a clear mind, causing immense harm to ourselves and others. The positive side of this training is the cultivation of a clear and present mind. It is a commitment to cherish our awareness, to protect our clarity as our most precious asset on the path to freedom. These 5 trainings, taken together, create a life of profound integrity and peace. They are the bedrock upon which all deeper meditative states can be built. But what of our past? What if our footprints in the sand trace a path of immense harm? Are we forever defined by our past actions? One of the most powerful stories in the Buddhist tradition offers a resounding answer of hope. It is the story of a man named Angulimala. Angulimala was a terrifying figure, a brutal serial killer who haunted the kingdom of Kosala. His name meant finger necklace, because he wore a gruesome garland made from the fingers of his victims. He was the embodiment of violence and hatred, a force of nature so feared that villages were abandoned and roads fell into disuse. One day, the Buddha, aware of Angulimala's plight, began to walk calmly and alone down the very road where the killer was known to operate. Angulimala saw him from a distance and was astonished at his courage. He grabbed his sword and began to run after the solitary monk. But a strange thing happened. Though Angulimala ran as fast as he could not catch up to the Buddha, who continued to walk at a perfectly normal, serene pace. Exhausted, bewildered, and enraged, Angulimala finally screamed out, "Stop, ascetic! Stop!" The Buddha, without turning, replied in a clear, calm voice, "I have stopped, Angulimala. It is you who have not stopped." Angulimala was stunned into silence. "What do you mean?" he demanded. "I am the one who has stopped," the Buddha explained. "I have stopped killing living beings. I have stopped causing harm. You are the one who is still running, still caught in the endless cycle of violence and suffering." The truth and compassion in the Buddha's words pierced through Angulimala's hardened heart like a thunderbolt. In that moment, the entire edifice of his rage and delusion crumbled. He saw the horror of his actions and the depth of his own suffering. He threw down his weapons, fell at the Buddha's feet, and begged to be accepted as a monk. And the Buddha, seeing his genuine repentance, accepted him. Angulimala's transformation was not easy. When he went into the town for alms, people who remembered his horrific past threw rocks and insults at him. He would return to the monastery bruised and bleeding, but he bore it all with incredible patience, understanding it as the inevitable consequence of his past deeds. Through diligent practice and unwavering resolve, the man who was once the most feared killer in the land eventually purified his mind completely and attained the supreme peace of enlightenment. The story of Angulimala is a radical testament to the human capacity for change. It teaches us that our past karma does not seal our fate. While our past actions create the conditions of our present life, it is our present actions that determine our future. The path of right action offers us the power to create a new destiny in every moment. It shows us that no matter how dark our past, the light of wisdom and compassion can dawn. Our actions are our true legacy. They are the energy we leave behind in the world. And one of the most significant actions that occupies our time and defines our impact on the world is the way we choose to make a living. And so, our journey of ethical conduct now leads us to explore how we can make our work itself a part of our spiritual path. Having established a foundation of harmlessness in our speech and actions, the path now invites us to look at one of the largest and most significant parts of our modern lives, our work. For so many of us, our livelihood is a source of profound stress. It is a compartment of our life that feels separate from our spiritual aspirations, a necessary burden we endure to pay the bills, a place where we feel our best intentions are compromised. The practice of samma ajiva, or right livelihood, is a radical invitation to heal this divide. It is the third and final pillar of ethical conduct, and it teaches us how to transform our work from a field of anxiety into a field of practice, a place where we can cultivate wisdom and compassion in the very act of earning a living. Right livelihood has two essential dimensions, an outer dimension and an inner one. The outer dimension concerns the nature of our profession itself. The Buddha advised his followers to avoid work that causes harm or increases the suffering in the world. The traditional list of harmful professions included being a weapons dealer, a slave trader, a butcher, a poison peddler, or an intoxicant seller. In our modern, complex world, we can expand this principle to guide our choices. Does my work depend on exploiting people? Does it deceive customers? Does it damage the environment? The guiding question is a simple, ethical one. Is my work, on balance, a force for well-being or a force for harm? This outer dimension asks us to use our conscience as a compass in our career choices, steering, as much as we are able, toward work that aligns with our deepest values. But for many of us, changing our profession is not a simple option. This is where the inner dimension of right livelihood becomes so powerful and so universally applicable. This dimension is not about what you do, but how you do it. It is about the quality of mind and heart that you bring to your work, whatever it may be. From this perspective, Any job that does not directly cause harm can become a profound spiritual practice. The office, the workshop, the kitchen, the classroom, these can become our monastery. The difficult colleague can become our teacher. The tedious task can become our meditation. This is accomplished by infusing our work with the other elements of the path. We practice right speech in our meetings and emails. We practice right action in our honest and fair dealings. And most importantly, we practice mindfulness in the execution of our tasks. When you are writing a report, you are just writing the report. You are feeling the keyboard under your fingers. You are aware of the words forming on the screen. You are not simultaneously worrying about your next meeting or regretting a past mistake. By bringing this single-pointed attention to each task, we cut through the immense stress of mental multitasking. We find a quiet dignity and a surprising peace in simply doing what we are doing with our full presence. We can also infuse our work with right intention. We can ask ourselves, how can this simple act be one of service? If you are a cleaner, you can see your work not just as tidying a room, but as creating a space of peace and clarity for the people who will use it. If you are a software developer, you can see your code not just as a technical problem, but as a way to create a tool that will make someone's life easier. By connecting with a motivation that is larger than just getting a paycheck, we find a deep and abiding sense of meaning, even in tasks that may seem mundane. There is a wonderful story from the ancient Taoist sage, Zhuangzi, that illustrates this state of mindful work perfectly. A ruler named Lord Wenhuai went to observe his personal cook, a man named Ding, as he was carving an ox. The king was astounded. Every movement was perfectly graceful. The knife seemed to dance, gliding through the carcass with a whisper, and the pieces of meat fell away, perfectly cut, as if by magic. "Astonishing!" the king exclaimed. "Your skill is sublime. What is your secret?" Cook Ding laid down his knife and replied, "What your servant loves is the way, which goes beyond mere skill. When I first began to cut up oxen, all I could see was the ox. After 3 years, I no longer saw the ox as a whole, and now I meet it with my spirit and don't look with my eyes. My senses stop functioning, and my spirit moves as it wants. I follow the natural contours, my knife, finding the great hollows and guiding itself through the large openings. I never touch a ligament or a tendon, let alone a bone." He then held up his blade. "A good cook," he said, "changes his knife once a year because he cuts. A mediocre cook changes his knife once a month because he hacks. But this knife of mine I have used for 19 years, and its blade is as sharp as if it just came from the whetstone. This is because there are spaces between the joints, and the blade of the knife has no thickness. If you insert what has no thickness into such a space, then there's plenty of room. That's why after 19 years my blade is still sharp." We spend most of our work days hacking. We use brute force, we meet resistance head-on, we try to power through our tasks, and by the end of the day, our own inner blade is dull, and we are exhausted. To practice right livelihood is to learn to become like Cook Ding. It is to cultivate such an intimate mindful presence with our work that we learn its natural rhythms and contours. We stop fighting against reality and learn to flow with it. We find the spaces between the joints, the path of least resistance, and we move with an effortless grace. This state of flow is not some mystical, unattainable talent. It is the natural result of a mind that is fully present, calm, and concentrated on the task at hand. There is a famous Zen saying that captures the heart of this teaching. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The external activity does not change. The world still needs wood to be chopped and water to be carried. The transformation is entirely internal. Before enlightenment, chopping wood is a chore. The mind is complaining. It is thinking about 1,000 other things. It is wishing the task were over. After enlightenment, the chopping of the wood is a meditation. It is a dance. It is done with total presence, with a silent mind, and with a deep appreciation for the wood, the axe, and the simple act itself. The sacred is not found by abandoning our ordinary life for a more spiritual one. The sacred is found by bringing a spiritual quality of attention to the life we already have. This is the ultimate promise of right livelihood. It closes the gap between the sacred and the secular, between our practice and our life. It empowers us to find our path not by escaping the world, but by engaging with it more fully, more mindfully, and more compassionately. Our work becomes an expression of our deepest values. But of course, life and work are challenging. We face pressure, deadlines, fatigue, and self-doubt. To maintain our balance and continue walking the path amidst these challenges requires a particular kind of energy. It requires us to learn how to apply our effort wisely, avoiding the extremes of burnout and complacency. And so, having established the foundation of ethical living, we now turn to the heart of mental training and the crucial practice of right effort. Having laid the foundation of ethical living through our speech, our actions, and our livelihood, we now enter the heart of mental cultivation, the training known as samadhi. This is where we learn to work directly with our own mind, to transform it from a chaotic master into a calm and capable servant. The driving force behind this transformation, the very engine of the path, is the practice of samavayama, or right effort. It is the energy, the vitality, and the joyful persistence that fuels our journey from suffering to freedom. When we hear the word effort, we often think of a kind of aggressive, forceful striving. We imagine gritting our teeth, tensing our muscles, and using sheer willpower to conquer an obstacle. But this is not right effort. That kind of tense, white-knuckled effort creates more stress than it relieves. It leads to burnout, frustration, and a sense of grim obligation. Right effort is something entirely different. It is skillful, intelligent, and balanced. It is less like the explosive force of a hammer and more like the steady, gentle, and persistent pressure of water that, over time, can wear away the hardest stone. It is an effort infused with wisdom and kindness. To understand this skillful energy, we can return to the beautiful image of the mind as a garden. Right intention gave us the vision for what kind of garden we want to cultivate. Right effort is the practical, hands-on work of the diligent gardener. This work is traditionally broken down into 4 distinct yet related activities. These are the 4 great efforts. The first is the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. This is the work of guarding the gates of our mind garden. A wise gardener doesn't wait for the entire garden to be overrun with weeds before acting. They build a fence. They are mindful of what seeds they allow to enter. In our practice, this means cultivating a wise restraint. We begin to notice the triggers that reliably lead to negative states of mind. If we know that scrolling through a particular social media feed always leaves us feeling envious and inadequate, we make a gentle effort to limit our exposure. If we know that engaging in political arguments online always leaves us feeling angry and agitated, we make a conscious choice to disengage. This is not about hiding from the world. It is about wisely protecting our inner environment from unnecessary toxicity, so that we have the resilience to engage with the world's real challenges from a place of strength and balance. The second is the effort to abandon unwholesome states that have already arisen. Despite our best efforts to guard the gates, weeds will inevitably sprout in the garden. A resentful thought, a wave of jealousy, a surge of desire, these things will arise. Our habitual tendency is either to indulge the weed, letting it grow until it chokes everything else, or to fight it violently, which often just strengthens its roots. Right effort offers a middle way. When we notice a weed, an unwholesome thought or emotion has arisen, we make a gentle effort to abandon it. We do this not by suppressing it, but by skillfully withdrawing our attention from it. We stop watering it with our focus. We might gently replace it with a wholesome thought, like replacing a thought of resentment with a thought of loving kindness. Or we might simply return our attention to the anchor of our breath, cutting off the unwholesome state supply of the mental energy it needs to survive. We let the weed wither from lack of nourishment. The third is the effort to cultivate wholesome states that have not yet arisen. This is the joyful part of the gardener's work. It is not enough to simply pull weeds. We must also actively plant the seeds of the beautiful things we want to grow. This is a proactive, creative effort. We set aside time in our day to deliberately plant seeds of kindness, compassion, gratitude, and joy. We practice metta-meditation. We keep a gratitude journal. We look for opportunities to be generous or to offer a kind word. We read inspiring texts. We consciously bring to mind our own good qualities and the good qualities of others. By doing this, we are systematically enriching the soil of our minds and making it a place where beautiful qualities can naturally begin to blossom. The fourth and final is the effort to maintain and develop wholesome states that have already arisen. When, Through our practice, a beautiful flower begins to bloom in our gardena, a moment of deep peace during meditation, a spontaneous feeling of compassion for a stranger, and a sense of quiet joy. A tendency is often to either ignore it or to get so excited that we scare it away. Right effort here means learning to skillfully nurture these precious states. We make a gentle effort to sustain our attention on the feeling of peace. We savor the taste of gratitude. We protect the fragile sprout of compassion from the harsh winds of distraction. By doing so, we help these wholesome states to grow strong, to become deeply rooted, to become not just fleeting visitors, but stable and enduring features of our inner landscape. The key to all four of these efforts is balance. The path is not a sprint, it is a lifelong marathon. This is beautifully illustrated by the story of a monk named Sona, who was practicing with immense but unskilled determination. He was from a wealthy family and had been raised in great comfort, and his feet were very delicate. He was so determined to attain enlightenment that he practiced walking meditation day and night until his feet were cracked, bleeding, and stained with blood. Yet for all his heroic effort, his mind was no closer to peace. He was filled with agitation and frustration. He became deeply discouraged and thought to himself, "I am a failure. This path is not for me. It would be better to give up this life and return to my home, where I can enjoy my wealth and do good deeds." The Buddha, with his psychic powers, knew of Sona's despair and appeared before him. He knew that in his lay life, Sona had been an expert lute player. "Sona," the Buddha asked, "tell me, when you were a musician, what happened if you tuned the strings of your lute too tightly?" Sona replied, "Lord, if the strings were too tight, they would snap and the lute would make no music." "And what happened?" the Buddha continued. "If you tuned the strings too loosely?" "Lord, if they were too loose, the lute would be dull and would make no music at all." "And what happened?" the Buddha asked, "when the strings were tuned not too tightly and not too loosely, but were evenly balanced?" Sona's face lit up. "Lord, when the strings were perfectly balanced, the lute would produce a beautiful, harmonious, and resonant sound." The Buddha smiled. "In the very same way, Sona, effort that is too strenuous and tight leads to restlessness and agitation, and effort that is too slack and loose leads to laziness and dullness. Therefore, Sona, resolve to cultivate a balanced and even energy. Tune the instrument of your mind so it is not too tight and not too loose. This is the way to make beautiful music. We are all Sona. We all have a tendency to fluctuate between the extremes of aggressive, self-critical striving and lazy, dull complacency. Right effort is the art of learning to tune our own instrument. It is the wisdom to know when to apply more energy and when to relax. It is the practice of showing up consistently with a patient and persistent energy, but always with a heart of kindness for ourselves. It is the joyful application of our life force in the service of our own liberation. This wise, balanced, and sustained energy is not an end in itself. It is the power that fuels our capacity to be present. It is the engine that drives our ability to pay attention from moment to moment without wavering. And so, this skillful effort leads us directly to the very heart of the meditative path, the cultivation of right mindfulness. We have walked the path of mental discipline, learning to apply our energy wisely with right effort, and to anchor it in the present moment with right mindfulness. We now arrive at the beautiful and powerful culmination of this training, the eighth and final factor of the path, Samma Samadhi, or right concentration. This is the practice of gathering the scattered, fragmented rays of our consciousness and unifying them into a single, steady, and luminous beam of awareness. It is the fruit that ripens on the tree of our practice, a state of profound stillness and clarity that allows us to see into the very nature of reality. In our everyday lives, we experience a form of concentration. We might be concentrated on a movie, on a challenging project at work, or on a captivating conversation. But this ordinary concentration is often temporary and directed at worldly things. Right concentration is different. It is a deep, wholesome, and sustained unification of the mind, built upon the foundation of the previous 7 path factors. It is a mind that, through ethical living, is free from remorse, that, through right effort, is balanced and vital, and that, through right mindfulness, is anchored and present. Only such a mind can settle into the deep, restorative peace of samadhi. It is essential to understand that right concentration is not a state of blissful unconsciousness or a zoned-out trance. It is the very opposite. It is a state of heightened awareness, supreme alertness, and radiant clarity. Nor is it achieved by forcefully suppressing our thoughts. A mind in right concentration is not a mind at war with itself. It is a mind that has become so peaceful and stable that the frantic activity of thinking naturally subsides, just as the ripples on a pond naturally cease when the wind dies down. The classic simile for this process is that of a person searching for a precious jewel that they know lies at the bottom of a lake. This jewel is wisdom, the liberating insight into our true nature. But the lake, our mind, is in a state of turmoil. The winds of sensual desire and ill will constantly stir the surface into agitated waves. And the bottom of the lake is covered in thick mud, the mud of the 5 hindrances: sensual craving, ill will, sloth and laziness, restlessness and worry, and skeptical doubt. As long as the wind is blowing and the mud is stirred up, the water is completely opaque. The jewel, though present, is entirely invisible. If we frantically jump into the water and start thrashing about, trying to find the jewel by force, we only stir up more mud, making the situation worse. This is our normal, agitated state of mind. Right concentration is the art of letting the lake become clear. First, through the practice of ethical conduct, sila, we stop the major disturbances. We stop throwing rocks into the water. Then, through right effort and right mindfulness, we patiently and gently allow the winds of craving and aversion to die down. We sit peacefully on the shore, anchored to our breath, and we simply wait. As our mind is no longer agitated, the heavy particles of mud, the 5 hindrances, naturally begin to settle. The laziness dissolves into energy. The restlessness gives way to calm. The doubt is replaced by confidence. And then, a magnificent transformation occurs. The water becomes perfectly still and crystal clear. And now, without any special searching, we can simply look down and see the precious jewel lying on the sandy bottom, shimmering in all its glory. The jewel of wisdom was there all along. It was never absent. It was merely obscured by the turbidity of our own minds. Right concentration is this state of pristine clarity. It is the still, clear water that allows the truth to be seen. As the mind settles into these deeper states of concentration, often called the jhanas, it becomes suffused with profoundly pleasant and nourishing qualities. A sense of uplifting joy, or piti, can arise, followed by a deep, abiding bliss and happiness. Or sukha, this is not the fleeting, agitating pleasure of the senses. It is a wholesome, internal happiness, born of stillness and purity. This inner bliss is a crucial part of the path, because it provides the mind with a superior form of nourishment. When the mind can feed on this deep, inner peace, it naturally begins to lose its obsessive craving for the lesser, junk food pleasures of the external world. It no longer needs to constantly seek for happiness outside of itself, because it has discovered a far more satisfying source within. This is the profound interplay between calm, samatha, and insight, vipassana. Right concentration provides the calm. It is the act of steadying the mind, like a surgeon steadying their hand before making a delicate incision. A shaky hand cannot perform surgery, and a scattered mind cannot see the subtle truths of existence. With a mind made calm, powerful, and one-pointed through samadhi, we can then turn this mental instrument to the practice of insight. We can look at our experience with a new level of magnification. In this state of clarity, we don't just intellectually understand impermanence. We directly witness the arising and passing of sensations and thoughts with microscopic precision. We don't just theorize about dukkha, we feel the subtle, inherent stress in every conditioned moment. And most importantly, we don't just debate the concept of not-self, anatta. We can look for a self, a me, and directly experience its absence. The concentrated mind is like a powerful laser beam, able to penetrate through the surface illusions and illuminate the fundamental nature of reality. While the deep absorptions of jhana may feel like a distant goal, the quality of concentration is something we can cultivate in every moment of our lives. It is the practice of unitasking in a world of multitasking. When you are washing the dishes, you are just washing the dishes. You feel the warmth of the water, the texture of the sponge, the shape of the plate. When you are listening to your child, you are just listening. You are not also checking your phone and planning your dinner. By bringing this quality of collected, one-pointed attention to our daily activities, we infuse our lives with a sense of peace, presence, and effectiveness. We stop hacking our way through life and learn to move with the effortless grace of a master craftsman. Ultimately, right concentration is the state of a mind that has come home to itself. It is unified, serene, and imperturbable. It is the stillness of the deep ocean, which remains unmoved by the chaos of the surface waves. But this stillness is not a retreat from life. It is the secure and stable platform from which we can most effectively engage with life. It provides us with the inner strength and clarity to face whatever arises, be it joy or sorrow, success or failure, with an unshakable equanimity. A mind that is truly still has nothing to fear from what might appear in it. And with this profound stability as our foundation, we are now fully prepared to turn and face the deepest shadows in our own psyche, the ancient forces of fear, temptation, and doubt that the Buddhist tradition personifies as the great adversary, Mara. Having cultivated a mind that is calm, clear, and unified through the practice of right concentration, we arrive at a place of profound inner stability. We have built a secure and peaceful shelter within ourselves, a place to rest. But the spiritual path is not about permanently hiding in a shelter. It is about developing the strength and wisdom to meet the entirety of life, including its most difficult and frightening aspects. Even with a calm mind, the storms will come. Our deepest fears, our most painful traumas, our most stubborn and destructive habits will inevitably arise to challenge us. The path now calls for courage. It asks us to turn and face our own inner darkness, to meet our own demons, not with aversion, but with awareness. This is the practice of facing Mara. In Buddhist cosmology, Mara is a powerful deity, the Lord of Illusion, who represents the forces of temptation, distraction, and death. But Mara is not just an external demon in a mythical story. Mara is a profound symbol for the totality of our own inner resistance to awakening. Mara is the seductive whisper of craving that says, "Just one more will make you happy." Mara is the paralyzing voice of fear that says, "Don't try, you will fail." Mara is the heavy cloak of despair that says, "There is no point, nothing will ever change." He is the personification of our conditioned habits, our clinging to ego, and our deep-seated aversion to letting go. He is the ultimate gatekeeper, the final adversary who stands between us and the supreme peace of nirvana. To be free, we must learn to meet him. The ultimate story of this confrontation takes place on the night of the Buddha's enlightenment. Siddhartha Gautama sat beneath the great Bodhi tree, having made a vow that he would not rise from that spot until he had found the end of suffering. Mara, seeing that his kingdom of illusion was in peril, knew he had to stop him. He unleashed a series of terrifying assaults, each designed to break Siddhartha's resolve. First, Mara summoned his 3 beautiful daughters. Their names were Craving, Discontent, and Lust. They danced before the meditating Siddhartha, taking on the forms of hundreds of maidens, promising him all the sensual pleasures of the world. They were the embodiment of kamatana, the thirst for sense pleasure. But Siddhartha, his mind stilled by deep concentration, did not waver. He saw the desire arising in his mind, but he did not identify with it. He saw these beautiful forms not as objects to be grasped, but as impermanent, fleeting phenomena, like a dream. Unmoved, he remained in perfect equanimity, and the daughters of Mara retreated in failure. Enraged by this failure, Mara unleashed his second and most terrifying assault, the army of fear. He summoned hordes of monstrous demons, brandishing terrifying weapons. They hurled mountains of fire and storms of rock and ash at the lone meditator. The sky grew dark and the earth shook. This was the embodiment of aversion, hatred, and fear. But a miracle occurred. As the deadly weapons and flaming rocks flew through the air towards Siddhartha, they transformed. The arrows turned into lotus blossoms. The flaming rocks became showers of fragrant petals, falling harmlessly around him. His mind, completely protected by the boundless, unconditional armor of loving kindness, or metta, could not be harmed. He met hatred not with counter-hatred, but with an unshakable and gentle heart. and the forces of fear had no power over him. Finally, in a last desperate attempt, Mara tried a more subtle approach. He appeared before Siddhartha and attacked his ego directly. "You, a mere mortal," Mara thundered. "By what right do you claim this seat of enlightenment, a seat that belongs to me? My great acts of power are witnessed by all my armies. Who is your witness?" Siddhartha was alone. He had no armies, no one to vouch for him. In this crucial moment, he did not argue. He did not defend his own virtue. He performed a simple, profound, and silent gesture. He reached down with his right hand and lightly touched the surface of the earth. He called upon the great earth itself to be his witness, to bear testimony to the countless lifetimes of patient effort, generosity, and virtue that had led him to this very spot. It is said that the earth roared its affirmation, shaking in 100,000 ways, and Mara, finally and utterly defeated, vanished along with his armies, just as the darkness of night vanishes with the rising of the sun. This story is our story. We all have our own armies of Mara to face. The temptations of desire, the terrifying monsters of our fear and anxiety, and the insidious nagging voice of self-doubt. The Buddha's victory shows us the way. We cannot defeat our demons by fighting them on their own terms. Aggression only breeds more aggression. Suppression only makes them stronger. Instead, we cultivate the qualities of the awakened heart. We meet the pull of desire with the clarity of mindfulness, seeing its empty and impermanent nature. We meet the assault of fear with the shield of loving kindness, for a heart full of love has no room for fear. And we meet the voice of self-doubt, not with arrogant pride, but with a quiet, grounded confidence in our own innate goodness, a trust in our own earth of practice. In our own lives, this practice is sometimes called inviting Mara to tea. When one of your personal demons appears, a wave of panic, a deep-seated grief, a surge of rage, your instinct is to run away or to fight. The practice is to do the opposite. You turn toward the experience. You acknowledge its presence. You might even say internally, "Ah, I see you, fear. You are welcome here. Come, sit down. Let us have tea together." This simple act of welcoming is radically transformative. It instantly dissolves the energy of resistance, which is what gives the demon so much of its power. Instead of an enemy to be vanquished, the emotion becomes a guest to be understood. You can then bring a gentle curiosity to it. You serve it tea by giving it your kind, mindful attention. You ask it, "What are you here to teach me? What vulnerable part of me are you trying to protect? What is the message you carry?" The Tibetan yogi Milarepa had a similar experience. When his cave was filled with demons, he first tried to chase them out with magic and rituals, but they only grew larger and more ferocious. It was only when he finally surrendered, invited them in, offered them a seat, and asked them to teach him the Dharma, that they bowed and dissolved into thin air. You cannot fight darkness. You cannot scoop it out of a room or push it away. But if you simply light one small candle, the darkness vanishes instantly. It has no substance of its own. It is merely the absence of light. Our fears, our traumas, our demons are the same. They are places within us where the light of awareness has not yet reached. We do not need to wage a war against our own minds. We need only to bring the gentle, illuminating candle of mindfulness to these dark corners, and in the steady, compassionate glow of our own awareness, the shadows lose their power. Facing Mara is not a single, dramatic event, but the ongoing, courageous practice of a fully human life. It is the commitment to meet all aspects of our experience, the light and the dark, with an open and accepting heart. It is the art of touching the earth of our own being, trusting in the ground of our practice, and knowing that we have what it takes to be free. When we learn to no longer be afraid of our own minds, when we have seen through the illusions of our inner demons, what is left? The path is cleared, the struggle is over. What remains is a state of profound and simple freedom, a way of moving through the world with the effortless grace of an empty boat drifting on a wide open sea. We have journeyed far. We have walked the path of ethical living, learning to use our words, actions, and work as instruments of peace. We have trained the mind, cultivating the balanced effort, profound mindfulness, and unshakable concentration needed to see reality clearly. We have faced the shadows of our own heart, the armies of Mara, and have learned to meet them not with fear, but with the quiet strength of compassionate awareness. And so we arrive at the final destination of the path, which, in a beautiful paradox, is not a destination at all, but a new way of beginning. It is the art of living with true freedom, the grace of profound letting go. To understand this state, let us imagine a story, a parable told by the ancient Taoist sage, Zhuangzi. A man is poling his boat across a river on a misty morning. Suddenly, through the mist, he sees another boat heading directly for him on a collision course. He shouts, "Hey, turn aside!" His voice is filled with anxiety. The other boat keeps coming. He shouts again, this time with anger, "Watch where you are going, you fool!" Still, the boat continues on its path, unwavering. Finally, it bumps into his boat with a gentle thud. Now, in a full-blown rage, the man grabs a boat hook to fend off the other vessel and to give its careless captain a piece of his mind. But as he leans over, he looks into the other boat and makes a discovery. It is empty. There is no one at the helm. It is just an empty boat that has come loose from its moorings, drifting freely with the river's current. In that instant, the story asks, what happens to the man's anger? It vanishes. It has nowhere to land. You cannot be angry at an empty boat. The entire drama, the anxiety, the fear, the escalating rage was entirely self-created. It was built on the assumption that there was a someone in the other boat who was being negligent or malicious. The empty boat reveals the truth. The man was simply shouting at the river, at the mist, at reality itself. Zhuangzi concludes, if a man can empty his own boat crossing the river of the world, who will be able to oppose him? Who will be able to harm him? This is the practice and the fruit of the entire path, to learn how to empty our own boat. This does not mean to become passive, lifeless, or uncaring. It means to empty our boat of the reactive, defensive, and perpetually insecure captain known as the ego. When the boat is empty of a self that needs to be right, that needs to be respected, that feels perpetually threatened, then the bumps and collisions of life lose their power to create suffering. Criticism from another person is no longer a personal attack. It is just another empty boat drifting by. The praise of another is also an empty boat. It is pleasant, but we do not cling to it for our sense of self-worth. We are free because there is no fragile me at the center of the story that needs to be protected at all costs. This state of letting go is perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of the spiritual path. It does not mean apathy or indifference. In fact, it is only when we are freed from the constant, exhausting work of ego defense that we can truly care for the world with an open and effective heart. It does not mean irresponsibility. We still act, we still engage with life, we still put forth our best effort. The difference is that we learn to let go of our attachment to the outcome. We pour our entire being into raising our children, creating our art, or doing our work. But we find our fulfillment in the loving process of the action itself, not in a desperate need for a specific result. We do our best, and then we release the outcome to the great, flowing river of causes and conditions. The Buddha told a similar and equally profound story about the nature of this ultimate letting go. He asked his monks to imagine a person who comes to a vast and dangerous flood of water. This is samsara, the ocean of suffering. On this shore, there is fear and danger. On the far shore, there is safety and peace nirvana. There is no bridge and no ferry, so this resourceful person gathers together grass, twigs, and branches, and with great effort builds a raft. By relying on the raft and paddling diligently, they safely cross the great water and arrive on the far shore. The Buddha then asked the crucial question, "Monks, what should that person do with the raft? Having found it so useful, should they lift it onto their shoulders and carry it with them as they continue their journey on dry land?" The monks replied, "No, Lord, that would be a heavy and foolish burden." The wise person, they concluded, would express their gratitude for the raft and then either beach it on the shore or set it adrift, continuing their journey unencumbered. In the very same way, the Buddha said, the teachings I have given you are like a raft for the purpose of crossing over, not for the purpose of grasping and holding on. This is the final, most subtle letting go. The entire path, the concepts of anicca, dukkha, and anatta, the practices of mindfulness and compassion, the structures of the Four Noble Truths, and the Eightfold Pathari, all part of the raft. They are brilliant, essential, and life-saving tools. But they are tools, not the goal itself. The goal is the freedom of the far shore. To cling even to the teachings, to become a professional Buddhist who is attached to the concepts and rituals, is to be the foolish person who insists on carrying the heavy raft on their back. Ultimate freedom means letting go of everything, including the very raft that brought you to freedom. You no longer need to constantly remind yourself everything is impermanent. You simply live in harmony with the flow of life. You no longer need to consciously practice metta. Your very being becomes an expression of kindness. To live as the empty boat is to move through the world with a new kind of grace. There is a spontaneity and an effortless rightness to your actions, because they are no longer filtered through the anxious calculations of the ego. There is a deep fearlessness, because when you have nothing to protect, you have nothing to lose. Your happiness is no longer a fragile thing, dependent on the weather of external circumstances. It is an unshakable peace that you carry within you, the jewel you found at the bottom of your own stilled lake. There is a lightness, even a playfulness, to your being. Life is no longer a grave problem to be solved, but a mysterious dance to be enjoyed. This is the supreme paradox of the path. The journey that required so much discipline, so much focused effort, so much diligent training, culminates in a state of utter effortlessness. The path that asked us to look so deeply at suffering leads to its complete and total end. We let go of everything, and in doing so, we gain everything. We empty our boat, and in doing so, we become one with the entire river of life. This is not a final destination where we set up a permanent camp. It is a new way to travel, a new way to be, in every unfolding moment of our lives. We have now journeyed from the realization of our discontent to the dawning of this profound freedom. All that remains is to gather the wisdom of this journey and to see how it can illuminate the path ahead. We have traveled a long way together on this nighttime journey, from the restless discontent of a mind caught in the modern world to the quiet, open sky of awareness. We began by looking honestly at the subtle friction of our lives, the pervasive sense of unsatisfactoriness that the Buddha called dukkha. We did not turn away, but looked deeper and found its source in the relentless, thirsty clinging of the mind, the habit of tanha. We saw that our suffering was not a random punishment, but a fire fed by a specific fuel, and in that discovery we found a profound hope. For if the fire has a fuel, it can cease to burn. We glimpsed the possibility of a far shore, a state of cool, unshakable peace called nirvana, the end of the struggle, and we were given the raft to make the crossing, the noble eightfold path. We learned to cultivate the wisdom to see clearly, the ethical conduct to walk through the world with a harmless and compassionate presence, and the mental discipline to tame the wild monkey of the mind, to face our deepest fears, and to finally rest in the freedom of letting go. Now, at the end of this journey, what is the one essential truth to carry with you into the quiet of your life? It is this: peace is not a destination you must travel to. It is not a reward you will find in a future relationship, a better job, or a more perfect version of yourself. It is a quality of mind that is available to you right now. It is the peace that is uncovered when you stop searching for it outside of yourself. The great secret is that the jewel you have been seeking has been in your own pocket all along. To let go of attachment is not to become a cold or unfeeling person. It is the very opposite. It is to learn to love the world and the people in it more freely, without the poison of clinging and the fear of loss. It is to engage with life more fully, to feel joy more deeply, and to hold sorrow more tenderly, because you are no longer at war with the ceaseless, changing flow of reality. You learn to live like the empty boat, navigating the river of the world with a light heart, no longer burdened by the heavy cargo of a fragile ego. This path does not ask you to become someone else. It does not require you to retreat from the world into a monastery or a cave. It asks only that you begin, right where you are. The journey to inner peace begins with a single step. That step may be one conscious breath, taken in the midst of a chaotic day. It may be one moment of choosing a kind thought over an angry one. It may be one instance of noticing your anxiety without judging it. You are the gardener of your own mind, the architect of your own peace. The way has been shown. The tools have been offered. Every small act of mindfulness, every gentle return to the present moment, is a step that leads you home, to the boundless peace and wisdom of your own true nature.